Sword of Coming Chapter 1077. Qin Pingon brought the millet grains to the house. The courtyard and house doors were all open. In the living room, apart from Zhou Xian, senior brother Zhou Xian and Bai were also there. Pei Qian was sitting at risk. I don't know what I'm sitting here and picture a little boy in green clothes. You don't seem to be a good drinker, old god. Besides, the old senior is so high level and so old. You really have to go to the wine table and then make a toast. Qin Lingjun was afraid that his hands would shake and he would not be able to hold the wine bowl steady. It was Qin Pingon who was wearing a blue gauze robe with his sword on his back. He crossed the threshold and made a head-to-head with the old real person. The younger generation has seen the real person. The old man reached out his hand and pressed it twice and said with a smile, "I am a guest who is not polite. I am wandering in my own house in the mountains. As the host, Daoist is polite. See you outside." It was the first time that Qin Pingon saw the most proud person in the world, and he bowed again. "I have seen Mr. Bai, senior brother Zhou Xian." Bai also nodded. Zhou Xian nodded with a smile. "Hurry up and sit down." Qin Pingon managed to stop looking at the tiger-headed hat, and didn't go to sit on the main chair, but after taking a seat beside senior brother Zhou Xian, he began to look away and looked at Pei Qian and Qin Lingjun. Pei Qian grinned. With a smile, Qin Lingjun's eyes were filled with resentment and he sniffed. He was obviously aggrieved. Well, what did old master you think? If he insisted on asking him to chat with him by name, he didn't dare to breathe. Zhou Xian sat beside Qin Lingjun. There is a row of seats on Qin Pingan's side. Cui Dongshan, who has become the suzerain, is at the innermost position, followed by guest Bai Yi, and senior brother Zhou Xian is at the outer side. Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Yushinren, in fact Qin Lingjun is not so restrained at ordinary times. When you get to know him well in the future, you will know that he is more lively. Of course, if Qin Lingjun didn't know your senior's identity in advance, he might be more lively and detached." Yu Xianfushu smiled and said, "So it is." It turned out that the relationship between the two parties was not that good. Qin Pingon asked curiously, "Why didn't Chao Qingqing come here?" Cui Dongshan leaned forward, stuck his head out and turned to look at his husband. "I have to talk to my husband behind his back about something big or small." Qin Pingon said, "Tell me about it." Pei Qian said, "Chao Qingqing met two friends at Tongyi's house. One of them is quite special." Qin Pingon wondered, what's the point of discussing this behind Chao Qing's back? When Chao Qingqing left Ahua Blessed Land back then, he traveled across continents with Master Chong. Later, in the Dali dynasty, he had a close relationship with Sun Chu, who took the imperial examination in the same year. There is nothing to make a fuss about making friends, not to mention that Chao Qingqing has been mature since he was a child. After the experience, he has a calm personality. What can go wrong? Cui Dongshan explained. In addition to Sun Chu, Mr. has already met. Chao Qingqing met two more friends at Tongyi's house. One is Su Zhen, a young scholar who has just started to practice in a government academy as a lecturer for many years. He and Chao Qingqing belong to the same interests. Occasionally, in some academic disputes, they can seek common ground while reserving differences. They belong to mutual learning. Moreover, it can be seen that Su Zhen admires Chao Qingqing very much, and feels that she and Chao Qingqing are the kind of teachers who are also teachers. Friendship. There is also a Qi trainer named Yu Li who is in his old age at the foot of the mountain, but he is successful in the Taoism and has skills in his appearance. He looks very young. Yu Li was born in the middle of Xianxia Yeshio. He is a talented young man who is erudite and knowledgeable. I had a private conversation with Mr. Chao, and Mr. Chao spoke highly of him. He felt that Yu Li was similar to Mr. Liu, who was half a teacher in his hometown. I was very curious. I wanted to see with my own eyes what the holy place was, and it was able to make junior brother Chao feel ashamed. Yu Li's background is well documented. He used to be a genealogical cultivator in a small fairy mansion in Tongyi's house. Now that the mountain gate is still there, the resume files are all there, including the family. There is no problem. The reason why it became a loose cultivator is because the teacher's sect did not have the slightest responsibility at all. He took his direct disciples and family members of French to flee to the north on a ferry. During this period, he happened to meet the door of Wuxia Xianxia and ran away without a trace. In a fit of anger, Yu Li did not leave his hometown for refuge with the head and teachers, nor did he leave without a trace. As soon as he left, he first kept calm, and took the group of outer disciples and servants to find a remote and barren place to hide. When there was no war and the world was peaceful, he didn't want to wait for any cultivator. When he returned to the old site, he dissipated all the money he had saved and gave it to the fellows from the lower 5 realms, and then helped them find a hilltop to open up a cave. Ixio. Speaking of which, Cui Dongshan bravely said, as entrusted by me, senior sister Pei once took a look at the other party's state of mind from a distance. The scene of the Taoist scene in Xinhu is a giant city. The people live and work in peace and contentment, roughly estimated to be as many as 1 million. Everyone is carefree, the buildings are in order, the flowers and trees are thriving, there are many academies, there are many martial arts halls, the incense and smoke of the gods and temples are curled together, the ghosts and spirits of the ghosts and the practitioners of qi. Coexisting with ghosts and monsters, Confucianism, Buddhism and Taoism and the knowledge of 100 schools of thought flow together like a river. Qin Pingon listened to this and commented, the mood is not normal. I just don't know if this person has this kind of heart, whether he has this way. Cui Dongshan also made a special trip to visit this person and spent almost half a month with him day and night. Even Cui Dongshan, the guy who is the best at picking things up, didn't find anything wrong. He is gentle and polite, treats people with sincerity, has high ambitions and works meticulously. But the more impeccable he is, the more certain Cui Dongshan is about one thing, and there will be demons when things are impermanent. Cui Dongshan's reason is very simple, there must be no second place in the world for people who are properly arranged like my husband. Qin Pingon thought for a moment then smiled. It's not an unspeakable secret, you should get Chao Qingqing to chat together. Harmful intentions are essential and defenses are essential. Pei Qian immediately said, Master, that's what I said at the time, the little brother has to be sneaky as if he can't see the light. Cui Dongshan's eyes widened suddenly. Senior sister Pei, have you ever said that? Why don't you remember little brother? Pei Qian reminded, I trouble sect Master Cui to continue talking about business. Cui Dongshan raised his hand and clenched his fist, beating his heart lightly. Nothing big white goose, something small brother. It's better now, are you calling sect Master Cui? It's heartbreaking and heartbreaking. Qin Pingon asked suddenly, does this person intend to join a certain country's temple? Cui Dongshan nodded and said, yes, he has already contacted the Yu dynasty last year. Qin Pingon nodded, which made more sense. Don't hide it, I'll talk to Chao Qingqing about this later. Cui Dongshan continued, Sir, there will be some bad things going on next and it will be difficult for students to report good news but not bad news. Qin Pingon smiled and said, I'm the mountain master and you are the sect master. After all, I've heard the worst and the real thing to worry about is sect Master Cui. Sect Master Cui was stunned. He shouldn't have come. Both Mr. and Senior Sister have turned their faces and didn't recognize anyone. Isn't the next sect not his own family? Qin Pingon said, who is the Bing Ding sword boat that suddenly appeared? According to the rules, it seems that we need to go to Jiaisfeng Patriarch Hall to discuss it before we can conclude. Cui Dongshan was listless, lowered his head and rubbed the handle of the chair with his sleeve and said weakly, then the student has something to talk about. First of all, there was a conflict on the mountain at Yulindu outside the capital of Yunyan Kingdom. A few qi refiners and a group of rivers and lakes the martial artist made a big fight, almost causing a fatal accident, and a confused lawsuit has already begun. The Emperor of Yunyan Kingdom is a mess again and he does not want to take matters. There was also a big quarrel inside the ancestral master hall. Li Ba, whose Taoist name was Tempered Palm, as the full abbot of the Donghai Sea Monarch Mansion, who was in charge of the excavation affairs in Dadu, probably heard a few unpleasant words in the capital and made a big fuss. If the other party must admit a mistake and take the words back, I ended up encountering a few masters with tough backs and tough mouths. You Li Ba are of high realm. You can kill them. There is no apology. Don't even think about it. Of course I wanted to do things fairly and I did that too. I apologized on the heads of those few people, but the result was that the two forces on the mountain with their own backgrounds were all overwhelmed, 2 dojos on the mountain, and a few the small countries at the foot of the mountain along the way are all gone. In addition, the 2 groups of Yulindu almost made their brains. Anyway, they are all things that don't make people worry. At that time, Wang Zhu threw 15,000 grain rain money to Cui Dongshan, almost knocking sect Master Cui unconscious on the spot. The thing just a short distance away was a pen washer with a celadone entrenched in qilong. She didn't say when she would return it. Cui Dongshan regarded it as an incidental addition. Qin Pingon said, it can be said that it is really bad. Cui Dongshan sighed heavily, clapped the handle of the chair and said angrily, "Not long ago several ruthless and elusive spoilers appeared in several Dada River sections that had already broken ground. A Qi trainer, every time he goes to the overcrowded river, all of which are small countries in the middle of Tongye continent without earth immortals. How can they withstand such a smashing and smashing? It can be said that the casualties are heavy." The huge talisman ran away and the other four, like the unidentified Shanzhe Yeshio, kept away from the Dadu River while sneaking and waiting for an opportunity. As soon as they made a move, they started killing people, especially those who belonged to the vassal states of the Great Dynasty. Xiang Gongqing and Xianxia's Qi trainer, in just a few days, immediately stopped after finishing this, and disappeared completely after only one shot, and he didn't forget to post the bulletin, threatening that this is how you dare to invent big things. Ruining the fate of my Tongyi's Hao and one continent's luck. In addition to the above, there are some content that framed the blame and poured dirty water, nothing more than to say. Selfish in order to please the Daquan Empress and Tapingshen Huangting at the same time, and Huang Yun of Pushan, especially thinking of the friendship of the hometown, tried to please Zhu, the king of the East Sea, who did the behind-the-scenes business. All were entrapped into the water of Dadu and given to the East China Sea for nothing. So it was an insidious act of exploiting the air transport of the half-continent to enrich Yishifu. Qin Pingon frowned and said nothing. It's not about the content of these slanders that were created out of nothing, but this group of Qi practitioners who rose up and disappeared like a rabbit, did not act recklessly at all, but were very well organized and interlocked. The key is that the other party must have left behind. Qin Pingon asked, "Has there been any plagues in the countries along the established Dadu route recently?" Cui Dongshan nodded. "Yes, there are more than one place, but the students have invited a few experts from the Chinese Tujia medical experts to come out and temporarily control the plague, so it did not spread." Qin Pingon asked, "Where is the academy?" Cui Dongshan said, "When you, the deputy head of Tianmu Academy, is already in the capital of Yunyan Kingdom to take charge of the overall situation." Qin Pingon breathed a sigh of relief. Cui Dongshan smiled a little. "Mr. Winshan is really resolute. He actually acted without permission, and he and the Confucian temple first beheaded and then played called Zhong Kue directly went to Fingdu in person, found one of the sources of the plague, followed the clues, and was eventually returned. Wen Yu in the world found one of the demon cultivators who raised the god of plague, killed him on the spot, and temporarily detained the god of plague who was forced to act in the academy. When you didn't know what method he used, I was able to contact the other two accomplices in the identity of that demon clan again, and clean them up together. Now I only talk about the ones on the table, and there are only two left." Pei Qian hesitated for a moment and said, "One of them is not the monk of the demon race who failed to escape back to the wilderness, but the monk of the native human race of Tongyi's Hao. It is said that he did not repent. The reason is that Tongyi's Hao suffered this catastrophe. It is because the Great Wall of Sword Qi failed to hold the passage of the upside-down mountain, and the Confucian temple sages sat by and watched." Cui Dongshan seemed reluctant to talk about this matter and continued, "The first group of Qi practitioners who rushed over to investigate this matter, our Qingping sword sect, dispatched 3 swordsmen, Miyu Xingyun and Lu Shui. There is the mountain master Huang Ting who gave up the retreat on Taiping Mountain, and he also brought the fairyland with the Taoist name Longmen. Sure enough, there are Ghost Fairy Huangman and Wufuximan on the other side of Donghai Mansion. As for the rest of the forces, add on the Pushun Yunkatang led by Xuehuai, the royal consecration of the Daquan dynasty, etc. There are a total of 8 teams with hidden whereabouts, along the Dadu line. Each chooses a place to settle, and then each performs its own duties and develops. A game of patience on both sides. And luck waiting for the rabbit." Zhou Xian tugged at his beard and said, "There is no reason to be a thief for 1,000 days to prevent a thief for 1,000 days. There is really no way to stand by and wait for a rabbit. You can't do nothing, but if the other party just stops, the trouble will be big. Just saying that people are scattered, how can they gather together? In addition to those unstoppable rumors, Yu Qingping sword sect plus Luobaishan, the reputation of Tongyi's Hao, if you are not careful you will be in a mess. Not to mention that the cultivators who belonged to the temporary ancestral hall were exhausted and had little effect. What's more important are those small countries, the government and the public, who are worried. After all, this is not a matter of what if there is trouble, it will kill people. Therefore most of Dada stopped all of a sudden along the way. Only big countries like Daquanyao and Daxian Mansion with sect names like Yuguazong and Qingpingjianzong still started to build Daoist step by step. Qin Pingon looked at Cui Dongshan. Cui Dongshan grinned. My avatar hidden in Pushan, since it is idle, it is now being used as a bait. As for whether the behind-the-scenes planner bites the hook, it depends on the mastermind or the power. Your accomplice, dare you to kill a young genius of the Dragon Gate realm who is a sword cultivator from Qingping sword sect, and he has become famous in the first battle. Qin Pingon rubbed his eyebrows and said, continue. Cui Dongshan said, let the master do the math and roughly deduce the places where the other party might appear. This guy was finally caught, because the yellow court of Taiping Mountain was not far away at that time, and as soon as she got when the news came, Yu Jian rushed over immediately and caught up. Qin Pingon frowned and said, did Huang Ting succeed in killing him? Killed. Cui Dongshan needn't say so much. Cui Dongshan rubbed his face with his hands and said helplessly, the other party is actually good enough to hide, but unfortunately when he met Huang Ting never dragged his feet. Qin Pingon remained silent. As the suzerain of Taiping Mountain, Huang Ting is not only a jade pure realm sword cultivator, but don't forget Huang Ting's good fortune is recognized as the best in a continent. She was in time to catch up with the monster monk who was most likely the mastermind, which was a proof in itself, but the other party escaped in the end, so it was not a proof. So this is actually more tricky than Miyu, who has already caught up with the immortal realm, and then uses the sword and is seriously injured by the opponent but escapes. Xing Yun with the appearance of a young man, Lu Shui with the appearance of an old woman, and the two local sword cultivators who set foot on the Great Wall of Sword Qi for the first time in the vast world. Xing Yun already has a new identity. The new steward of Kite Fairy. Just because of the sudden appearance of so many monsters running around, the first time I did something was to kill the monsters in another place. The only problem is that they may not have the chance to see that or a few monster monks. Cui Dongshan said, this beast who has been confirmed to be a monster, publicly threatened before being caught up by Huang Ting that in the future as long as there is dust flying along the road, he will eat a talisman. Qin Pingon asked, is this demon clan the kind of monk who is proficient in escape and is good at escaping from the upper 5 realms? Cui Dongshan shook his head and said, according to Huang Ting, it seems that he is only in the nascent soul realm. But he is indeed proficient in the 5 elements escape technique, and the one-handed talisman is endless. It is dazzling to be used by this guy. That chase for less than a quarter of an hour, Huang Ting actually used a lot of swords, but the one that really fell on the demon clan was only one sword, and that was what Huang Ting and I claimed to be trying for luck by instinctively slashing a sword. Cui Dongshan said with emphasis, so this monster is very good at talismans. Yu Xian asked, Sect Master Cui, is there any talisman residue? Cui Dongshan took out a small porcelain jar from his sleeve and carefully poured the ashes of the talisman on the table. To be honest, if Yu Xian was not in the mountains, Cui Dongshan had no choice but to ask his husband to invite Yu Lao Shenxian to go down from the bright galaxy. Yu Xian raised his sleeves, stretched out his fingers and twirled a little bit of the talisman paper residue, rubbed his fingers lightly and suddenly flicked his sleeves. A little golden light appeared in the air, and then formed a line from the dots from the line to the surface, a line. A tiny golden light stretched out, and in turn grows out, a complete golden talisman. Just at the moment of forming the talisman was about to explode, like a talisman in the talisman, that was only waiting for this moment. It's a pity that this talisman met the talisman Yu Xian. Yu Xian had already drawn a talisman at the same time to detain this talisman, and the talisman with countless cracks and fine marks floated in the air, shaky. Yu Xian stared for a moment and soon came to a mixed conclusion. It's not any kind of big talisman that has been recorded in the book. There are more than 2,200 talisman lines. It's rough, but it's not small. Look. It can be concluded that it is most likely the first creation drawn by this monster monk himself. So he is still in the process of groping and he has not been able to complete it. Otherwise, even if I have already prepared, I will use the talisman to suppress the talisman, and only say that there are Dao marks in the talisman's gallbladder. Must have been destroyed by the corpse, but the cultivator who was able to draw this new talisman has a very high attainments, and his approach is very wild with fantastic ideas and several ideas, which can be regarded as daring to think that no one has ever thought of before. I have to admit that this guy is a good seedling, really a good seedling to practice talisman. If it hides in Tongye continent for a long time, it must be a big hidden danger. Yu Xian continued. Huang Ting's guess is good. The realm is the nascent soul realm is the most likely, and the possibility of the Jade Pure realm cannot be said to be completely absent, but the possibility is extremely small. Qin Pingon suddenly said, it can't be just the Golden Core realm. Yu Xian retwisted the talisman with his right hand, and pinched his left hand to count. After a while the old talisman that finally couldn't hold it shattered. Yu Xian nodded and said, it's really possible Jindan Yuanying between 5 and 5. Cui Dongshan rubbed his chin and said, mostly it's Jindan. What if this monstrosity cultivator entered the nascent soul on the way to escape, or even took advantage of the opportunity to retreat again? Would he become Yupu? Jindan is still so tricky. If the other party steps over a big step and enters the 5 realms from Earth Immortal, the consequences will be unimaginable. Yu Xian asked, Sect Master Cui, only these talisman residues? Cui Dongshan nodded and said, Huang Ting found this by chance. Yu Xian said regretfully, it's a pity. If the talisman is complete, even if it is half a piece left, it is easy to say, but now, just relying on a little residue of the talisman to find a definite clue, it is wishful thinking. Even the old man can't do it. The hands and feet of the talisman are very clean, and it seems that he has been guarded from the beginning. Good guy, it is more than just a surrogate talisman. Use the avatar to draw the avatar and then draw the talisman. This fellow has a lot of hearts, tricky, really tricky. Suddenly found that many people were looking at him. Qin Pingon laughed angrily. What do? I also look at Chief Shou. This guy clearly learned the essence of Jiang Lao Zong's mainstream crime. Chief Shou, who came to join in the fun and saw the master at the door, stopped with an innocent look on his face. Can he blame himself? Bai Yi, although not a sword cultivator, is the real sword fairy in Jiang Shang's heart. Yes, rich family background made Jiang Shangzhen feel inferior. Yu Xian thought for a moment, then Yen Su said, it's really not possible. This old man will go to Tongye continent in person, and wait for the last few months to see if we can meet this rising star on the talisman Dao for a while. It won't be realistic after a while. After all, this old man still needs to help me keep an eye on the trajectory of the green road outside the sky, so I shouldn't be too distracted. No one said anything polite and overkill. Jiang Shangzhen said with a smile. Then I will follow the old fairy Yu to return to my hometown, learn Huang Ting and try my luck. But Qin Pingon said, Senior, you should not leave his mind as a substitute in Xinghe, and rush to Tongye continent with his real body. Maybe he is waiting for this opportunity. Cui Dongshan nodded and said, that's true. Qin Pingon said, Senior, you don't need to pay attention to this matter. We will try to solve this hidden danger as soon as possible. Jiang Shangzhen will go back first, and go to Tongye continent when the junior finishes dealing with his personal affairs. Yu Xian didn't have any pretentiousness, nodded and sighed. It's not easy to do things for others. If you don't succeed in 100 years, if you fail, it's more than enough. Don't be discouraged, just keep the clouds and see the moon, and I believe there will always be a time when the willows and flowers are bright and another village is bright. Cui Dongshan coughed a few times. Sir, that's all I want to talk about. I'll leave first. I'm exhausted by the car and boat, so I have to slow down and rest. Qin Pingon nodded and said in his heart, after the break, call Jiang Shangzhen, and immediately go to the 2 places of Ahua blessed land and work separately. You can call more people. In the near future I will let Jiang Shangzhen and Xiego bring the phoenix tree. Umbrella to Tongye continent. Cui Dongshan kept walking and asked in his heart, Sir, are you worried that someone in those 2 places has been lurking for a long time and is making trouble secretly? It is reasonable to say that no matter who it is, it will show some respect to the old master. Since it is no matter who it is, then this includes carefulness. Indeed, no matter who it is, they are unwilling to take the initiative to provoke the master of Bixiao. Qin Pingon lowered his head slightly, his eyes were dark and unclear, and said indifferently, it's not some snakes in the dry swamp who are making waves, or there is a reason for the old man to kill the filth and fertile fields early. Hearing the words, Cui Dongshan walked slowly, his eyes were complicated, he hesitated to speak and even turned to look at his husband. Qin Pingon raised his gaze and said, Fu Wushuang and misfortune do not come singly. Disasters, whether it is on Tong Yezhou or hidden in the blessed land, are of course bad things that are extremely worrying, but in a sense it can also be regarded as a turning point. When something turns to the bottom, it is a good thing to go up. Cui Dongshan nodded lightly, then turned his head and strode away with 2 snow-white sleeves. Seeing that the big white geese were gone, Qin Lingjun took courage, stood up and asked tentatively, "Master Mountain Master, why don't I send Sect Master Cui to him?" Just as Qin Pingon was about to nod his head, Zhou Xian smiled and said, "Daoist friend Jingqing, you just left after meeting. It's not appropriate or not. It's better to stay and chat with the old man for a while." Only then did Qin Lingjun raise his buttocks. Hearing the words, he opened his mouth wide and lowered his buttocks gently. If it wasn't for the mountain master sitting in the house, Qin Lingjun would only be more like sitting on pins and needles, burning his buttocks on fire. The boy in Xingyi sat back in the chair, his eyes were blank and he was speechless. Bai also glanced at the boy in Xingyi. Qin Lingjun felt a little guilty. No one had told him who this tiger-headed boy was before. At that time, Uncle Qin couldn't keep his mouth shut. On the road he met a high and a low walking together. Qin Lingjun found it interesting, laughed and asked Zhou Xian with his hands on his hips, "Has the gentleman accepted another apprentice?" Qin Lingjun saw that Mr. Zhou Xian just smiled and didn't speak. His eyes seemed to be full of encouragement and recognition. Qin Lingjun looked at the handsome young man and exclaimed in an old-fashioned manner, Okay, I will say that the child named Xing Yugon is not a fool and he will have a good future in the future. The little brother in front of him has a very famous name. A cultivator with a pure and peculiar foundation. He is not cowardly or he is not cowardly. Mr. Zhou Xian has a double welcome which is gratifying. I don't know if this little brother can drink wine. If he can, it happens to be with your master. Let's go to my house for breakfast together. Zhou Xian smiled and said that his name is Bai Yi. He is definitely not a coward, but he is not my disciple but a good friend. Qin Lingjun choked for a while, and he will never suffer the same loss twice. Never make the same mistake again. Therefore we must not let the young man change his name. Instead he hurriedly stopped, putting his hands on his hips. The boy in Xingyi looked solemn, and then asked Mr. Zhou Xian in his heart, "Who is Bai Yi?" Zhou Xian smiled and said that it was the Bai Yi you thought. Qin Lingjun is familiar with the door and the road. This is called practice makes perfect. He held his forehead with lightning speed and his body was swaying. Wandering a few steps, first striding and then flying in the blink of an eye, the boy in Xingyi disappeared without a trace in an instant. After that, before Chief Shou went up the mountain, Qin Lingjun had been hiding in the house, euphemistically called thinking behind closed doors and practicing closed-door meditation. After Cui Dongshan walked out of the house, he thought about it and what Mr. After a long wait, it finally came. Cui Dongshan let out a long breath and one jumped up and rushed forward, shouting and drinking, punching and kicking. His sleeves snapped and he hit a set of punches. Mr. Qin Pingon is in such a state of mind, so is it not the case for student Cui Dongshan? Bad things are not afraid of early, good things are not afraid of late. According to this statement, a series of sinister storms can indeed be regarded as the signs and beginnings of the next good thing. But in between, going up the mountain and going down, the sect must be exhausted and laborious. Cui Dongshan didn't go back to his house and his figure swept away, and then went over the wall to the courtyard where the parasol umbrellas were placed. Sitting on the other side of the steps seemed to be waiting for someone, raised his 5 fingers, pinched his fingers for fortune-telling, and from time to time he lifted the other sleeve and shook it a few times. Cui Dongshan was bored, yawned and finally waited for the 2 of them to come, and went to Lu Xianyang and Gu Ken of the Hushan faction. All the greetings were avoided. Cui Dongshan flicked his sleeves, set up a sword formation with golden light drawn in a circle, took out a scroll of paintings from his sleeves and said in a low voice, "This portrait is drawn by the hand of the female crown of Tongyi's Hao, Huang Ting. The head is messing with the demon clan, but the most likely, it is just the incarnation of an avatar. Brother Lu, what do you think? How to say it? No matter what, I will listen to Brother Lu." Lu Xianyang stretched out his hand, not saying a word of nonsense. Cui Dongshan handed over the scroll, but he didn't let go. "Will it startle the snake?" Lu Xianyang sneered and said, "Brother Cui is wrong. I saw a snake with my own eyes. Where did you startle the snake and startle the grass? Don't linger, let go, give a stick first. If you don't hit 7 inches, wait for Lousy to hit. Let's talk." Big Brother Lu, once the realm status is high, the courage will become more and more incredible. It is worthy of being a suzerain and the old domineering. My brother, don't flatter yourself. Sect Master Cui will sidestep this sect master. Cui Dongshan immediately put his feet together and jumped sideways. My little brother is ordered. Lu Xianyang turned his head to look at Gu Ken, lowered his voice and said, "Slug, if Qin Pingon comes to stop him, remember to help him and persuade him not to mind his own business." Gukin has already said. He didn't come, just glanced here and took Zhou Xian for a walk to the top of the mountain. Lu Xianying was heartbroken and scolded directly, "Things with no conscience." Cui Dongshan said angrily, "We are both suzerain masters and we are on an equal footing. Brother Lu, if you say that, I will not be happy, brother." Lu Xianying shook the picture scroll, let it hang in the air and waved his hand again, signaling Cui Dongshan to cool off. The big white goose is another horizontal jump. Lu Xianying just glanced at the portrait of the cultivator, then began to calm down, closing his eyes as if dozing off. Cui Dongshan didn't dare to disturb Lu Xianying's asking sword in his dream. He just grinned and looked straight at Gukin. Gukin responded with a polite smile. Cui Dongshan said in his heart, "To be honest, it's not clear how others feel about you, at least neither Pei Qian nor I hate you." Gukin nodded and smiled. "It's easy to say." Cui Dongshan rubbed his hands together and said, "Since you don't hate me either and we both look good to each other, why don't we both?" Gukin said bluntly, "No way." Cui Dongshan stared and said, "Anyway, listen to what I have to say before rejecting it." Gukin said, "If it is an outsider, I will chat with the outsider outside the door." Cui Dongshan gave a thumbs up and praised, "This is a beautiful word." Gukin hesitated for a moment and bowed his thanks to the boy in white with a mole between his eyebrows, but didn't say a word. Cui Dongshan smiled brightly and bowed in return. They are all the most intelligent people and they are the people closest to Qin Pingon, so they are all silent. Qin Pingon took Zhou Xian to the top of Jilin Peak. In the past, the mountain temple was slightly repaired and turned into a simple building in the shape of a palace, but no plaques were hung for the time being. Following the old man's line of sight, Qin Pingon smiled and said, "I originally thought about the name of the plaque, just 2 words. If you read it from right to left, it is Taoism. If you read it from left to right, it is Taoism." Zhou Xian's eyes lit up. What a good idea. It seems that there is no such plaque in the Immortal mansion on the top of the mountain. Seeing that the opportunity was not good, Qin Pingon had no choice but to say, "Agree in advance, seniors should not steal the ideas of juniors." Zhou Xian pondered for a moment then smiled, "I'm sure it won't be plagiarism. Not that cheeky. How about buying it with you? I lent you 500 gold and copper coins without any interest?" Qin Pingon just shook his head, "No." Zhou Xian sighed and had no choice but to give up. Qin Pingon is a Confucian disciple, so it's not good to hang these 2-character plaques on the top of the mountain. After all, it will look like a Taoist priest, but wouldn't it be just right to fill the golden peak in Taofu Mountain for himself? Qin Pingon waited and waited, never thinking that the old man has no attitude of insisting on his own opinion at all, and there is no reason to start talking about business, so Qin Pingon began to deter 1 or 2. "Senior, the matter of price is actually easy to negotiate. Don't talk about it. The old man is not a fool. Is it possible to spend 500 gold and copper coins just to buy 2 words? Lu Daochun, who hates too much money, is rare after all." Zhou Xian smiled and waved his hand, silent for a long time, and said softly, "Master Qin, you still need to be yourself, and you are most afraid of being powerless when you do things." Qin Pingon said, "The younger generation is already in retreat." Zhou Xian also said, "I can't eat hot tofu in a hurry and I failed 2 retreats to break through." Qin Pingon hummed. Suddenly the old man asked, "What? Are you already in retreat?" Qin Pingon smiled and said, "I dare not deceive the seniors." Zhou Xian couldn't care about any taboos on the mountain, so he hurriedly asked curiously, "You have to make it clear that you have enough money." Before the old man came, he had already collected 1,500 gold and copper coins and started to make swords? Or retreat in general? Qin Pingon replied frankly, "It's not sword training but retreat." Yushwani stomped his feet and said helplessly, "Good boy. This is already in a closed-door situation? If this is a little bit wrong, the old show can't call me half-dead." Qin Pingon said helplessly, "I can't predict the profit. How can I guess that senior you will go to the Luopa mountain?" Zhou Xian took a deep breath, held his breath, stomped his feet, spread his hands and said, "I wish the mountain master here a smooth retreat." After a while Zhou Xian was stunned. "Qin Pingon, isn't your retreat a bit too mysterious? Can you talk about it? I can isolate the world and chat in private." Qin Pingon smiled and said, If it is successful, I will invite the seniors to drink again and we will not talk about it now. Zhou Xian nodded and said, It's okay, it's okay. At the moment, the old man can't wait to have any auspicious words to say together with the beans. Qin Pingon rested on the white jade railing with one hand and asked with a smile, Senior Yu, I can be more casual. Zhou Xian was the first to sit on the railing. You can do whatever you want. Qin Pingon turned over and sat down, took out a red wine gourd and asked, Old master, you know that there are many immortal houses in Hauranjiuzhou. Whether there is a dragon-killing platform that is willing to sell, it doesn't matter the size, it is fine. As long as you are willing to sell even though offer. Zhou Xian shook his head and said, You can't buy this stuff. Going around, once it appears in the world, almost all of them are monopolized by the major sections. Even if it is not a kendo sect, it must be carefully hidden as a family heirloom. Qin Pingon used to have a jujube but not a jujube to hit a shot. Hearing that the very popular old man on the mountain said so, he had no thought of picking up the omission at all. Zhou Xian said, I'll say hello to a few friends on the mountain when I look back and help me see if there is such a good thing in the wild world. Qin Pingon took a sip of wine, thanked him, raised his head and took a sip of wine and said with a smile, It wasn't so rare in my hometown before. It was just that I didn't know the goods at that time and I had a little money so I just took it. I've come to buy a mountain. I'm young and ignorant with shallow eye sockets and I always feel that things that don't have long legs, fields, houses, etc., are the most secure. Zhou Xian laughed heartily. There is only one thing I am very curious. Qin Pingon asked, Is the old man curious about the rules of the town's circulation? Zhou Xian Yinshu nodded. No. Qin Pingon said, I once asked senior brother Cui in Qingtu and then I asked Lu Qin. The answers were similar. They all said that because I didn't know the most fundamental contexts, I couldn't deduce the pursuit of the truth. Zhou Xian smiled and said, If it's not like this, how can Qingtong Tianjun use the fog to grow flowers and hide from the sky and cross the sea? Qin Pingon laughed aloud, put away the sword-raising gourd that was used as a wine jug, twisted his wrist, and there was an extra dry tobacco rod. Zhou Xian said in surprise, Is this good? Qin Pingon smiled and said, Just like drinking, over time habit becomes natural. Qin Pingan's two natal flying swords and the method of refining swords in caged sparrows is very simple and difficult, that is, eating dragon-slaying stones. What kind of shortcut can this be? Dragon-slaying stone is even rarer than gold and copper coins. If it is really a sword repairer, it will be a little less, let alone saying that it has no market, it is directly priceless. The local people in the town are commonly known as Longji Mountain, and they store a large piece of dragon-slaying terrace, but the record of the Dali household department is Jiaoyou Mountain. In the history of the Dali Song dynasty, it was banned during the Qunwei period. The dragon-slaying platform, one of the two execution platforms in the ancient heavenly court, was smashed to pieces by a sword cultivator and scattered in the world. The two largest cliffs were located in the later Aquarius Island and the Great Wall of Sword Qi. It is the rocky cliff of Longji Mountain that Dali named Jiaoyou Mountain and Lu Yen called it the ancient names Jianin, Tianbi, etc. The dragon-slaying cliff on Longji Mountain was originally divided into half by Fengxue Temple and Zhenwu Mountain according to the agreement of the three parties. The Dali Song clan could help seal the mountain and mine it. Later, the Dali dynasty temporarily changed its mind and let the chief of the founding faction. The worship of Wanqiong took a share of the pie because Longquan Jinzong accounted for a small proportion, and Wanqiong's identity and reputation were there, especially Fengxue Temple was Wanqiong's maiden family, not to mention the former national teacher Cui Ying went in person. I went to Zhenwu Mountain, so on the Zhenwu Mountain side, even if they were reluctant, they could only accept their fate. However, the fastest one to use up the dragon-slaying platform's share was the Wind Snow Temple. Over the years, only 2 elderly sword cultivators have been sent to cultivate there to symbolically guard the top of the mountain. After that, Wanqiong's share followed, missing away. But the patriarch of the military family, who looked like a child in Fengxue Temple, obtained an ancient sword technique. The key is that the sword technique is extremely high, but the threshold is not high. Earth Immortal sword cultivator can practice this sword vein. And Wanqiong also acquired a long-lost sword casting technique. After Lu Xianying returned to his hometown, he often went there to hang out, saying that he was patrolling the mountain and the boundary of his own home, but his eyes were aimed at the stone cliff on the side of Zhenwu Mountain, so he often guarded Lu Xianying like a thief. Every time you enter the mountain, There will be monks in Jinwu Mountain who follow the suzerain master of Longquan Sword sect. Therefore, when Qin Pingon returned to his hometown this time, he did not have any thoughts about that Longji mountain. Even though he became the new national teacher of Dali not long ago, there was only dragon-slaying terrace left on Jinwu Mountain, so he didn't even think about it. Will not mention. At the head of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, Qin Pingon formed Dan, Yuan Ying and Jade Pu one after another, and the number of flying swords climbed the steps, 100,000, 200,000, 400,000. There are only two ways to go. One is to improve Qin Pingan's realm, and the other is to eat gold and copper coins. This shortcut, compared to eating dragonstone, is really only relatively easy. Refining 1,500 gold and copper coins and integrating them into the long river of time that has already taken shape. It is roughly estimated that the number of flying swords that can be divided into one wellhead month is conservatively estimated, and it is hoped that it will reach 800,000. Maybe as many as 1 million. But this kind of sword training is extremely stable. But Qin Pingan's retreat this time has made him think so much about returning to the Summer Palace. Every detail has to be weighed repeatedly and he dare not take a wrong step. Zhou Xian rarely hesitated so much and waved his sleeves to create a great formation of talismans. It's really itchy. You can talk to me about the matter of seclusion. Just talk about it. Let's talk about it. I live in seclusion with a method like yours. After so many years, it is still unheard of. How can there be a cultivator who can go into seclusion while wandering outside? The key is that the Earth Immortals become the big threshold of Yupu. I remember that when I closed in seclusion I did not dare to care so much. Not to mention you failed twice before? Qin Pingon had to make a rough statement. Beidou can also prolong life by injecting death, and it is in line with the meaning of Daoist people's death that they can live. So I set up 9 talisman clones outside my real body. Halfway down the mountainside of Aquarius Island. As for my real body, I am a pseudonym Qinji. In a rural place I am a teacher who has opened a museum. Zhou Xian waited for the next paragraph, but the boy stopped talking. Are you gone? Qin Pingon said helplessly. Senior, let the junior give an overview. The old scholar Xianxia sighed and stretched out his hand to grab Qin Pingan's arm. This is too perfunctory, Qin Pingon. Please tell me in a little more detail. That's called earnestness. It has nothing to do with the level of boundaries. Qin Pingon said slowly. My husband has a saying of heavenly official, and the Book of Rites also has a saying of the 7 emotions including joy, anger, sorrow, fear, love, hatred and desire. The 7 avatars correspond to the 7 emotions, respectively. The 2 hidden ones are responsible for casting the net and closing the net respectively. Among them, pure martial arts means to manifest a mouthful of pure infuriating energy, and try to Taoize in one's own small world as much as possible, constricting the mind and the Buddhist cessation of thinking. Taoism's spiritual fast, all of which are on the side, the other is hidden. It is a practitioner of Qi. On the other hand, let the thoughts arise, the more the better, the rest is non-stop. For example, it is like flowers blooming everywhere, inspiration from Lu Chen's great masters. Article: the sentence the real person in ancient times, he sleeps without dreams, sleeps without worry, eats unwillingly and breathes deeply. In fact, I have also referred to the 6 desires of Buddhism, and found that this road travels it doesn't work. As for why, I want to talk about the Tao that involves my own practice. As for the chapter on Guixing written by one of the ancestors of the miscellaneous family, I have deduced it in the Mi Xiefeng dojo before, and it seems that it is not enough. I acted as the anchor and gave up. In the end I chose the 5 poisons theory. Among them, according to Buddhist teachings, I deliberately put the beam on the beam and put the head on the head again. The height of the game, the difficulty of passing the test. Simply put, it is to fight the battlefield with the state of mind, use the mind to kill the mind, kill the thieves like numbness and build the jingguan, but the piles of bones piled up into the mountains are all me. Terrible, how terrifying it is, I want to see it. Everyone on the mountain said that the height is 1 foot and the devil is 10 feet tall. I have to see how high it can be. So the real body is free to chat with seniors. These free days. The mind of Qin Pingon and the sword wielder who traveled to the sky together is not included in this list. So this is a distant echo that is like the connection between heaven and earth and mutual traction. A grain of heart is attached to the 9 talisman clones, forming a large formation, in line with the law of heaven and earth. Qin Pingon did not hesitate to use up 9 talismans, including 2 cyan talisman papers that were priceless and could not be bought with money. They are all disposable consumables. Unless the mountain is closed and a clone is put away, the talisman will continue to disperse until it is exhausted and eventually becomes a piece of waste paper. Wonderful, eye-opening. Zhou Xian Yenshu said with a smile. Trouble Qin Daoyu, let's talk more carefully and force him to be named. Qin Pingon was in high spirits, his eyebrows were soaring. He picked up the cigarette stick and gently knocked on the white jade railing, with a sonorous sound of gold and stone. Share your own thoughts and ideas with the old man. With a wave of his sleeves, the smoke curled up and turned into 9 portraits, and the hanging images were hexagrams. Y7 displays. The owner of Qingshan Mountain in the unhappy Mangosteen building. The Lord Sorrows. The bamboo branch school's outer door knows that guests are outdated. The main high. Wu Di, a Taoist priest in Yushuan State, set up a stall. The Lord is Wrath. A middle-aged scribe in the Lzong Temple in Daliu Prefecture. The main desire. Traveling to Qingxing country, Qin Ren, a young man with a sword on his back, reappears in the world of Hehuan Mountain. The Lord fears. In a small country on the south bank of Dadu in the capital Secretary province, there is a gentleman on Liang who does not steal books but only reads them. Lord Love. The open eyes and Taoist watchers of the lotus flower blessed land. Lord Evil. Y2 hidden. A warrior with a golden body in the attire of a Daoist in the mountains. The big bearded saber is a ranger-like golden elixir. This is the first layer of background color, which belongs to laying the foundation with 7 emotions. Zhou Xian nodded slightly. The owner of the mountain in green shirt, stay in the mountain. The 7 feelings are the main grief, and the grief is greater than the death of the heart. This is consistent with Qin Daoyu's saying that you can only live if you die. The Taoist friend was young and poor and he liked to read but couldn't read it. Now he wants to get it. When he reads the content of the book, listens to the sound of turning the book and smells the fragrance of the ink, he will naturally feel joy and love. If you don't get close to evil, you don't know good. It's to see the Tao. Only. When Qin Pingon heard this, he smiled knowingly, raised his finger, pointed to his heart again and took over the conversation. It's just. After all, impartial, but it's my limit. Zhou Xian smiled and said, what about the second layer's gold drawing method? Please ask fellow Daoist Qin to talk about it. Qin Pingon smiled and nodded. The 9 portraits turned from static to each other, each with its own role and its own way in different scenes. After a moment of silence, Qin Pingon said, Senior may not know something. I was born on May 5th. Zhou Xian was stunned for a moment and suddenly said, do you want to get rid of the 5 poisonous hearts? During the wild trip, and Lu Qin borrowed the 14 realms, Taoism belongs to the growth of the seedlings, and Qin Ping's top priority is to eliminate hidden dangers. In this matter, Lu Qin not only reminded in advance, but also reminded afterwards that Qin Pingon must be sympathetic. Previously at the top of Splashing Mo Peak, Lu Qin had revealed secrets to Chao Rong, his direct disciple. Looks like a freehand landscape painting with splashing ink, but it is actually meticulous to the extreme. Lu Qin and Chao Rong leaked the secret, the content of words, and the true meaning of Buddhism and Taoism. Tao has its appearance and heaven has its shape. To imitate the method of landscape, one must first grasp the landscape outside the painting. The one caught was the unwilling horse who needed to be subdued, the demon of the Taoist mind. Also at the top of Splashing Mo Peak, Zhou Qiu and Lu Tai and their group left Fengla town. They once saw another Qin Pingon who was approaching from the mountains and rivers. He was completely different from the boy in straw sandals with a sword on his back. A young hidden officer who matches the image in his mind. The youthful appearance can be described as a jade tree facing the wind, full of Taoism with a clear demeanor, wearing a golden crown, wearing a blue gauze robe, holding a white jade Ganoderma lucidum in his hand and stepping on the cloud shoes. This is the clone of one of the hidden stars, the Prime Minister of the Great Array. This, Qin Pingon, is specially responsible for secretly guarding the Tao of the sword-backed teenagers who are not high in martial arts. That outfit, which was completely different from Qin Ping's usual, was not only good-looking, but also practical. To put it simply, in addition to just in case, you can make up for the lack of young Qin Ren, and if you can't beat him you can run away so that the entire team will not fall short and will not give up halfway. And this young Taoist-looking Qin Pingon looks like a Qi practitioner more than a Qi practitioner, but he is actually a real warrior with a golden body, not a golden elixir. Qin Pingon did not hesitate to use a piece of cyan talisman paper. The other avatar that also used the cyan talisman paper as Lu Chen had expected, was indeed a reckless man of 5 big and 3 thick, with a sword on his waist and the appearance of a bearded ranger. This is still Qin Pingon being limited by the current nascent soul realm. Compared with the real talisman masters, his accomplishments in the talisman are indeed not so subtle. The original 2 valuable green talismans have been replaced by those of the talisman lineage. It is entirely possible to get the Dao Gaoxian to draw a talisman, and to create a pair of nascent soul realm and far travel realm martial artist clones respectively. Buddhists say that greed, hatred, ignorance, slowness and doubt are the 5 poisonous minds, which create bad karma and hinder the practice. Therefore, without eliminating the 5 poisonous minds, the so-called meditation is ultimately evil, and the supernatural powers cultivated are ultimately not the right law. Even the inner demons of cultivators come from this. And Qin Pingan's birthday happens to be the 5th day of the 5th lunar month. The almanac says that the month number is Xingyang, and the time is only the Dragon Boat Festival. Therefore, in the vast world the customs are different in different places, but the purpose is the same. Children tie 5-color silk threads, women wear sachets, men drink realgar wine, craftsmen cast yang sui mirrors, and temples and Taoist temples invite paper talismans, or hang calamus and wormwood outside the door, or hanging statues of gods to exorcise evil spirits and ward off evil spirits. In short, they are asking for a safe home. According to the general saying of the hometown and small town, people born on this day are born broom stars. If you like listening to old people tell stories, you will get another saying with similar meaning but slightly different. May 5th used to be the day of offering sacrifices to gods. Just like a family's house, it should not be located behind temples and ancestral halls. The truth is that everyone burns incense and worships the gods and kowtows. The living people of that family can afford this gift. In the same way, how can a child born on May 5th bear this life? Of course, when the orphan in Mud Ping Lane grows up, especially when he becomes a well-known landowner in the western mountains in that state city, the old sayings and principles will not change, but they will often add another sentence, that the child's parents know the rules. Knowing to help their son come up with a good name early, Ping'an, Ping Ping'an, the more rustic the name the more able to live, and at the same time the meaning is good. This is not only the later good fortune of Qin Pingon, not only can he afford it, still able to keep it. The name, Qin Pingon, naturally deserves a lot of credit. Qin Pingon relies on a Taoist Beidou formation with 7 manifestations and 2 hidden elements, follows the method of mountain climbing and abiding by one method, and then uses Buddhist methods to eliminate the 5 hearts. They are both cultivating their own way and protecting their own way. As Chao Rong said, the first serious illness in young people is high qi because the blood is strong, irritable and easy to anger. But just the opposite of what Tianjun Chao Rong had guessed, the sword-carrying teenager Chen Ren was suspicious rather than angry, so Lu Chenkai said that the scabbard of the young man was empty. This kind of symbol is exactly the meaning of the clay bottle alley teenager who walked out of his hometown. He had an incomparably strong self-denial, which led to uncertainty, theorems and fixed laws and more self-doubt. The first Qin Pingon that Lu Chen saw was the outdated sect of the Chishan bamboo branch. The second one is Qin Ren, a sword-backed boy wearing straw sandals who appeared in the Hehuan Mountains. This is Qin Pingon making a review. In the past, the young man in the rough alley used to take one step at a time, think far and far, and carefully looked at the whole unfamiliar world and the world. Hence doubt. A middle-aged scholar who copied scriptures every day and occasionally watched the world of Yunqi in a Luzong temple in the territory of Yuzhou of the Dali dynasty. There is a Buddhist saying that cultivating precepts, calmness, wisdom and greed, hatred and delusion, and the Vinaya school recognizes the strictest precepts. However, a Confucian student who stayed in an ancient temple and had a rough meal every day, in addition to copying Buddhist scriptures every day, would also practice Daomen Lei Fa at the same time. The mind that is eliminated. What is the mind? Is greed. In the capital of Yushuan Kingdom, Taoist Wu Di, as the person who lifted the net after casting the net, is very close to the Ma family in Xinghua Lane of the Qiu family. And Qin Pingon deliberately added fuel to the fire. This avatar is the anger of the 7 emotions, so he can use this to sharpen his heart. This is the real hatred. The dignified and hidden official who almost dismantled the entire Xingyang mountain to pieces, forced a monument to be erected at the border. But it is the Zhuji faction that is close to Xinjiang Mountain and is very likely to become a vassal mountain. It is an outsider who only pays a few snow money every month. This is a kind of slow that doesn't seem to be superficial at all. It doesn't matter whether others know it or not, but it comes from the heart. Qin Pingon, the avatar who stayed on the first floor of the Luopao Mangosteen building, was both a resting place and a reading room. There are 8 booklets on the desk and the books vary in thickness and content. In addition to Buddhist Zen, Vinaya, Pure Land, etc. There are also excerpts and reading experiences of Taoist classics, including landscape travel notes, geography, and many miscellaneous books, involving the art of war, farming, and yin and yang. The human affairs and experiences of the human world under the mountain and so on, are compiled into books one by one. If the Zhou Xian and the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister's 2 hidden, a total of 9 talisman avatars attached to the mind, are regarded as jointly compiling a book, then the Qin Pingon, who stayed in the bamboo tower in the mountain, is not only the chief inspector, but also the chief compilation officials are both compiling and critiquing school books. Is crazy. All kinds of mixed knowledge and knowledge must be transformed into the so-called good teachers of Buddhism, and ignorance must be broken. Knowing these inside stories and plans, Zhou Xian was greatly amazed and was amazed for a while he didn't know how to speak. Zhou Xian asked a digression, is it really just to break through the realm and return to Yupu? Qin Pingon said, since Beidou is dead. If there is no vengeance, I am not me. Since it's not a battlefield killing, it's a personal vendetta, it's even simpler and killing people still needs to be punished. Zhou Xian was silent for a moment without the slightest murderous intent, and the old man couldn't even notice the murderous ripples of the young fellow Daoist around him. Zhou Xian calmed his mind and asked, is there a 3rd floor? Yes. The master said that the gentleman is the 3, the benevolent is not worried, the knowledgeable is not confused, and the brave is not afraid. Qin Pingon nodded and said, there are also 6 arts passed down by the most holy masters which together are exactly 9. It is used to tame a Taoist mind so that the real body will not go into trouble. More secrets have been leaked on one after another. Taoist Wu Di set up a stall for fortune-telling, mainly studying the rituals of Taoism in Longhu Mountain, supplemented by visiting the Confucian Taichung Temple, the ancestral temple and other regulations and systems. So it is the Li of the 6 arts of the gentleman. Knowing that the customer is outdated, whenever fishing he begins to try to use mental arithmetic and arithmetic as the background, and go deep into the roots of business and farming knowledge. This is the number of the 6 arts. The gentleman on Liang, who was hidden in the library of the Secretary Province, carried with him several ancient character books borrowed from the Confucian temple, supplemented the group scriptures, inscriptions on tablets, and specialized in exegesis, which was called books. The middle-aged scribes in the Yuzhou temple listened to the morning bells and the evening drums every day, and the Buddha sang the sound of wooden fish. When copying books, the nibs were scratched on the rough rice paper. In the dead of night, people listened to the spring water flowing into the temple. The big scroll of the door and Xianxia, as long as you are willing to listen, where in the world is not Gongshangjiu Zhengyu? Therefore it is the joy of the 6 arts. The burly man with bearded bears looks like a warrior but is actually a fairy. In addition to a saber, he also carries a bow on his back. It is just a real arrow, and arrows are connected like a series of arrows, but not the real bow behind him, but the continuous breathing of ancient real people. The shooting that truly conforms to Taoism. In the lotus root blessed land, high in the sky, looking down on the geography as the nominal owner of a blessed land, arranging the world, opening up the road, the teacher is famous, so it is royal. Zhou Xian shook his head, not denying, not disapproving. The old man doesn't know what to say anymore. If there are only some ideas really whimsical and then let others find it unbelievable, but as long as you can't practice it and do it in a proper way, it is still a lofty loft in the sky, just beautiful. This is not the case for Qin Pingon. Step by step, interlocking, no one is not Qin Pingon himself, and no one does not conform to a part of his original heart and then follow the road with big strides. Zhou Xian sighed and sighed again and finally was willing to speak. At present there are only 3 gentlemen left, and the strawshoe boy is a brave man who is not afraid? The master of the bamboo tower and green shirt is a wise man who is not confused? A pure martial artist full of Dao Qi, is the benevolent not worried? Qin Pingon shook his head and said, I really thought this way at the beginning, but after thinking about it I felt that it didn't make much sense, so I made some changes. The young Qinren watched the art of war while walking, cooperated with Kanyu to find dragons and acupoints, and also practiced the 5 elements of yin and yang. During his years as a kiln apprentice he literally went into the mountains to eat soil, and began to identify the nature of soil very early. No matter how weak or timid, people must look forward and move forward. In this way, as Zhou Xian guessed, it is only reasonable that the brave are not afraid. Zhou Xian remembered something. There was an archway in Qin Pingan's hometown, and one of the plaques was doing his part. Zhou Xian Yanshu nodded and said, "Understood." Never thought that Qin Pingan shook his head and said, "Senior is wrong. It's not that the benevolent is not worried, but the knower is not confused. It is precisely because he knows some things that he must do his part, so the knower is not confused." Zhou Xian chewed it for a while, then couldn't help but slapped his knees and said, "This solution is wonderful." Zhou Xian praised again and again. Then the bamboo tower, green shirt and Qin Pingan do not move their nests, and sit on the top of the mountain, like the commander-in-chief of the military tent. It seems that he is pursuing a knowledgeable person who will not be confused, but it is not. It is for the sake of the benevolent not to worry. Qin Pingan put away his cigarette stick, stood up, stretched his waist, his eyes were hot. So, then learn boxing and swordsmanship, study and cultivate Taoism and work hard. After all, there must be a pursuit. So this is the real brave is not afraid in Qin Pingan's mind, which falls on the pure warrior who carries the flying sword. The poor and lonely young man on the side of the beloved woman once had a rhetoric. The patriarch of the 3 sects blocked the way and also gave way to me. Later, when Zhulu learned boxing, the old man Chuiqing once said that he wanted to teach martial artists all over the world to see my boxing, but he felt that the sky was above me. On the top of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, young foreigners once had a voice, but only the boss Zhenxian listened to it. Zhou Xian raised his head and asked with a smile, "Fellow Daoist, there will never be a 4th floor, right?" "Have." Qin Pingan held his sleeves in both hands, raised his head high, squinted and smiled. "I am the last hidden officer of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and I am a sword cultivator. Of course, I need to practice swords. For example, to create a small world. It is said that everything is difficult only at the beginning, and everything is not difficult when there is a beginning. Using the supernatural powers of the 2 natal flying swords to superimpose each other, through the sight, hearing and imagination of the 9 avatars, to re-engraving, imitating and imitating, all the faces, eyebrows, eyes, clothes, atmosphere, tone of voice and words. Words and sentences, recorded one by one, astronomical geography, human mountains and rivers, flowers and trees, buildings of various colors, delicacies, dead and living things, Confucianism, Buddhism and Taoism, and the knowledge of hundreds of schools of thought. In addition to the collection of books in the tall building in Xinhu, and those sycamore leaves in the Yaolu in Tongyi's Hao town, each sycamore leaf is an illusion world. Qingtong is not used properly, it is empty, but as long as it falls into the hands of Qin Pingan. Millions of flying swords and talismans are extremely subtle, expand extremely vast, build extremely high, far and thick, and achieve both reality and reality. True and false. Qin Pingan can create a small world within a long river of time. As long as Qin Pingan successfully created the first small world of the Great Tao, where the cycle is complete, and where all sentient beings naturally arise and do not know what 1 is, as long as there is 1 there are no 2, 3, 4. With 2, 3 and 4, once 3,000 small thousand worlds are created, can't we finally create a large thousand world? Zhou Xian said in a complicated mood, "Is there a 5th floor?" Qin Pingan nodded and said, "Yes, as long as the first Shaoqian world is built I can deal with me, and I ask myself about boxing without knowing it, and I hope to become the 11th realm of martial arts." Zhou Xian asked, "Is there a 6th floor?" Qin Pingan smiled and said, "Senior also thinks highly of me." Zhou Xian smiled and said, "Can I not look down on fellow Daoists?" The old man raised his head to look at you, boy. It was not a while. Qin Pingan quickly apologized and sat back on the railing. Zhou Xian was silent for a long time and said to himself, "I have to say it should be like this in the original way. If a Taoist is like this, he is a real person." Qin Pingan was hesitant to say anything and finally said, "Junior belongs to the dojo in the shell of snails, so I have to do it as a last resort. The seniors are different, so there is no need for this." Zhou Xian smiled and said, "Why are you still scolding the master?" You scolded me for a smooth journey in my practice and never worrying about money? Qin Pingon looked into the distance, put his hands lightly on his knees and said with a smile, "To be honest, the younger generation also wants to be scolded like this." He was poor at a young age, his parents died, he suffered from hunger and cold, and he liked to read but could not open up. "I have left my hometown, the sky is high and the earth is wide, and I have seen and heard strange things. I traveled far away and I walked around the rivers and lakes to treat people with sincerity." A little girl in black rushed to the top of the mountain. Zhou Xian had quietly removed the talisman formation. Seeing that the good mountain master and the old immortal seemed to be talking about business, he stopped abruptly, thinking about going back to the house. Qin Pingon smiled and waved. "Is something wrong?" Millet grains trotted towards the good man mountain master. Another one stopped and stood straight, holding a green bamboo stick in his arms, scratching his face. "Brows are burning. Jingqing doesn't know what's going on. He said that he will move to a small town to ride a dragon. I lived in the lane for a few days and I asked him several times, but there was no reason." Qin Pingon held back his laughter and said with a straight face, 100,000 urgent, don't delay. Go quickly and return and then investigate and report again." Millet stomped her feet, frowned her pale and yellowish brows, nodded vigorously and said with a serious look, "I have an order." Turning around and running away, he turned back on the same road, carrying a golden pole on his shoulders and holding a walking stick, running like a wheel. Zhou Xian twists his beard and laughs, and Luopa Mountain has a good family style. Sort of coming. Chapter 1092. Yu Shiwu was silent for a moment and asked curiously, "Can you control the speed of time passing by in this world?" Qin Pingon remained silent, and in an instant what Yu Shiwu saw in his eyes was a strange phenomenon. The heavy snow stopped suddenly, and spring blossoms bloomed in a blink of an eye open. The grass grows and the warblers fly, groups of young children fly paper kites on the bank. The rainy season is continuous. The summer flood is soaring, the river is bright and moonlit. The water waves are not moving, the lines are like picturesque lines, and there is a ferryman who looks like a fairy or a spirit, thin as a solitary bamboo. Daoist clothes are as white as wild clouds. I saw him stepping on a flat boat, without the need for a boatman to support the wormwood. His robes flew across the river. The autumn wind was rustling, and the villager was noisily carrying 2 bamboo cages containing men and women to the water's edge, and finally ushered in another heavy snowfall in the freezing weather. For Yu Shiwu, a bystander, the changing scenery of the 4 seasons, the customs of each season are like a picture book that is quickly turned by the spectator. During this process, Yu Shiwu's body can fully perceive the warmth and coldness of the seasons change. But just when Yu Shiwu decided that Qin Pingon could indeed control the long river of time at will at this time, Qin Pingon suddenly raised his hand, hung it in front of Yu Shiwu's eyes and snapped his fingers. "You have heard of it before?" Between the words, Yu Shiwu was horrified to find that he and Qin Pingon were in a dark place where he could not see his fingers. In the night, Qin Pingon smiled. "A leaf can block the eyes, since this leaf can make people see nothing. Of course it can. What people see is nothing more than a small carving on a leaf by a craftsman. Compared with working hard to create a small world with no omissions or flaws, will it save time, effort, money and worry if you manipulate your vision?" Just when Yu Shiwu was doubtful, Qin Pingon had already pulled Yu Shiwu back to the place, stretched out his hand to catch a snowflake and muttered to himself, "I participated in the Confucian temple discussion earlier, and at a ferry, I had the honor to meet with Mr. Zheng. Take a walk together during a certain journey. Mr. Zheng said something strange which I still can't believe until now. He said I once saw 2 identical snowflakes." Yu Shiwu bent down to pick up some thinner stones from the shore, and threw them towards the surface of the water, causing the water to float, causing a series of unconnected ripples, and the water flowers blossomed in order from large to small. At this moment, a misty young woman slowly walked out of the water. She was slim and tall in green clothes and yellow crown. She said that as long as she could guess her name she could enter the Zhuishui mansion. Yu Shiwu glanced at Qin Pingon, thinking what was going on, guessing lantern riddles? Qin Pingon reminded with a smile, "Get the narcissus, the green sleeve and the yellow crown. I can't remind fellow Daoists more." The narcissus looked at Yu Shiwu with hope in his eyes, but the latter was like an elm who didn't understand. Like a lump, she waited for a while, but she couldn't wait for the answer, so she could only sigh quietly. Where did the water fairy come from? The green sleeve, the yellow crown and the white yueying. Yueying regrets that she has nothing to do with the young master, so let's say goodbye first and then we will meet later. Yu Shiwu wanted to get back the place, pointed to Qin Shanju beside him and asked, "Why does the fairy treat one more than another and don't ask my friends around me?" She smiled and said, "I like to judge people by their appearance." Yu Shiwu laughed out loud. Qin Pingon looked calm. When the Narcissus returned to the water, Qin Pingon joked, "You Daoist, you should study more in the future, won't you miss a marriage?" Yu Shiwu asked, "When will you be willing to restore my real body and realm? It can be roughly confirmed that the skin that I have now belongs to a kind of uncommon Yin spirit travels out of the body, and the real body has been detained by Qin Pingon and suppressed in a certain place. Recovering the memory earlier was like an empty skin, like an empty water tank. Someone poured water from the water tank next door into it." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "What's the rush? I can't eat hot tofu in a hurry. Just think of me as a pawnshop shopkeeper." Pawnshop? After careful study, it is quite vivid. It's a good metaphor indeed. Yu Shiwu said, "Then switch identities and try it with you?" Qin Pingon remained silent, turned his head and looked at Yu Shiwu with a smile. Yu Shiwu was shocked. Could it be? My spare time is Qin Pingon and Qin Pingon in front of me is the real self? Qin Ping patted Yu Shiwu on the shoulder and couldn't help but smile and said, "Don't be nervous, I don't have Mr. Zheng's ability yet. What I have heard is bizarre and unimaginable, which can be described as the eyes and ears of the new world. What's more, Yu Shiwu always feels uneasy when he is always so procrastinating, with his hands out of the sky and his feet on the ground." Qin Pingon smiled and comforted, "Don't worry, I won't stay here for a long time and I will show you a few more places. Then you decide whether you want to partner with me and do something different together. As long as you nod, I just withdrew from here." Hearing this, Yu Shiwu asked, "What if I still refuse to nod?" Qin Pingon replied with a smile, "Didn't I say I can't eat hot tofu in a hurry? This sentence will work for you, of course it works for me." Yu Shiwu was full of helplessness and this guy made it clear that he wanted to exhaust himself, so it just depends on who can survive who. Afterwards, Yu Shiwu saw a scroll. In the painting, a young scholar who went on a study tour and stayed here in the temple read a book until late at night. He was so tired that he fell asleep at his desk. Cigarettes are rising slowly, and the dream content appears in the clouds like a picture scroll. The man is dreaming of a beautiful cardamom girl holding a castanet and singing. Strange flowers and weeds are growing on the rocks beside the house, and there is a donkey drinking water from the trough. There is a towering tree beside it with a crescent moon hanging from the top of the tree in the sky. Inside the moon, there is a Guanghan palace as small as a mustard seed. In the spotless heavenly palace, there is also a cold fairy who is doing makeup in front of the mirror. Except for the face of the fairy, there is still an image of a picture scroll on the wall of the house. It is a picture of a scholar sleeping at his desk, just like the 3 calamities of the chess record. Cycle. Qin Pingon explained for Yu Shiwu. The chess masters here only need to compare the thousands of chess records to make their moves. They can follow the steps step by step, just like copying the text of books. Chess players with different chess abilities are equipped with different levels of chess players. Chess records, if you don't enter the game yourself, it's enough for you to watch for several years without any flaws. As for the common chess games in the market, there are all chess remnants, all of which are seemingly tricky formulas. It's easier. Of course, in the final analysis, these methods are all walking on the path of the predecessors, taking shortcuts and taking shortcuts. Not to mention happy tailoring. Yu Shiwu frowned and asked, "Suppose I didn't know that I entered the illusion beforehand, but I had doubts in my heart and I am a master of chess?" Qin Pingon said, "Then you will not enter this world. For example, you may walk into a place where Go has not yet appeared. When you are in it, if you have leisure and elegance, you can become the originator of this way. This joy might dispel some of your doubts?" Yu Shiwu shook his head. "Shoumin mistakenly planted, one word difference, ambiguity abounds." Qin Ping said with a smile, "When copying the inscriptions, do you want to learn the brush or the blade?" Yu Shiwu changed the subject, "Limited by your real background, so these phantom worlds are not of high quality?" The deer riding fairy and the deer riding fairy appeared earlier. The female Narcissus, is your skill at the pinnacle? Together with me and the old owners of the Xianfu ruins, all the truths are added together, and the one you get is destined to be no higher than what you have stored in your current state, the total amount of aura? Then can I understand it this way: we people are a collection of mountains and rivers and all things about equal to you? Qin Ping smiled and said, that's right or wrong? Yu Shiwu seemed to have caught a little inspiration and asked himself, thousands of arrangements in general terms are just equivalent to an inferior blessed place created by you? Qin Pingon said, wait and see. The marketplace, the rivers and lakes, the temples, and finally the ethereal mountain. Just like a craftsman's practice from easy to difficult, step by step. But if the technique stops here, then it will be inferior to the original work of a blank paper blessed land. In the eyes of the monks on the top of the mountain, it is naturally difficult to say the word good fortune. So Yu Shiwu soon saw a majestic mountain top that seemed to be the origin of the world's dragon veins. There was an old man with barren breast. From the mouth spit out the colorful treasures of heaven, material and earth, and draw a trail of radiance, scattered all over the world. Yu Shiwu was in a daze and sighed, if it's not an illusion, it's at least the size of a medium blessed place? Where did you get so much spiritual energy? Qin Pingon said, to be honest, I am in Luopishan and I have a good family background. After all, following Li Sheng's trip to the outer world was very rewarding. Yu Shiwu jumped out suddenly, if you have collected all the golden fragments in the world, wouldn't you be? Speaking of this, Yu Shiwu shook his head, it was too whimsical. Once it's done, wouldn't Qin Pingon be able to rebuild a heaven 10,000 years ago? I never thought about it. Qin Pingon said, I have thought about it, but I have only thought about it. Not only is this matter too difficult, it is almost destined to be a fantasy of fetching water from a bamboo basket. I also worry that this move will fall into a situation similar to the cycle of 3 calamities. Killed this early, I thought I shouldn't have. Yu Shiwu put his head in his hands. Qin Pingon said, a person who never doubts whether the world is real or not, must the world he lives in be real? A person who insists on questioning whether the world is real or not, must the world he lives in be fake? As for the truth or falsehood of I, the one who wants to know the answer the most is that there are 2 people I know. Lu Qin Jing Juzhong. There are also 2 who are most qualified to give the answer. Buddha and Daoist ancestors. When Yu Shiwu heard this, he asked cautiously, then what about the most holy teacher? Qin Pingon thought for a while and replied, the most holy teacher doesn't seem to care much about this. Yu Shiwu was silent for a long time and finally opened his heart for the first time. I actually knew my ultimate fate a long time ago. 10,000 years ago, a total killing. Yu Shiwu carried an overwhelmed karma. This is a kind of misery even for Yu Shiwu, who is a genius in cultivating Taoism. For example, ordinary masters can buy an umbrella and wait for the rainy day, but Yu Shiwu must have a means to prevent the rain from falling. How can it be done? So for so many years, Yu Shiwu has taken the external affairs very lightly. Just like a certain figure in a series of illusions seen in the inn on the left side of Handan Road, the widow of the proprietress of the restaurant, she no longer cares whether tomorrow's fate is good or bad. Whenever Yu Shiwu thought of her, he would think of himself, and then he would think of the wind-blowing cloth cover outside the restaurant. It seems that all of this is Qin Pingon's hint to himself? Is it a kind of fortune-telling? Probably guessing what Yu Shiwu was thinking, Qin Pingon said, it's like telling your own fortune. What's next? Just wait like this? Then do you know what is the meaning of asking for fortune-telling for ordinary people in the market? The meaning is that if you calculate a good fate, you can just move forward with peace of mind. If you calculate a bad fate, you have to change your way of practice, you have to change your mind and think about it, and you have to get rid of certain smudges. So the practice of Taoism has never been limited to the mountains. Debt, if not, how to turn bad fate into good fate, how to burn the IOUs for debt collectors, and how to clear debts for debt repayers are the practice of everyone. When Yu Shiwu heard this, the sadness on his face faded. Qin Pingon said, I still have to ask you a question. Should this life pay off the debts of the previous life? And should this life be responsible for the next life? Yu Shiwu was at a loss. Qin Ping smiled and said, there is still one more question, let's forget it for now. It won't be too late to ask after you figure out the answer to the first question. Yu Shiwa's head was as big as a bucket and he waved his hands and said, don't ask, don't ask. Hurry up and change places. It is not easy to practice Taoism and become an immortal. There is a place of Taoism with beautiful mountains and clear waters, and there is a fairy family mansion with a long history. The mountains and rivers are beautiful, the ins and outs, the spiritual energy is clean and abundant, and there is no need for turbid air. They came to a fairy house, a women's boudoir. Those who practice Taoism sit on futons in the dojo, fast behind closed doors, or burn incense or light talismans. These are common timekeeping objects on the mountain, which are used to help Qi practitioners determine the size of the circle. It's just the interior decoration which is too powdery. It was empty, and the hostess, who must be a Qi practitioner, seemed to have not returned for the time being. I saw that mountain before, the door archway and the cliff carvings in the mountains. Yu Shiwu judged that this place should be called Huorui Peak of Qinhuang Mountain. This time, this place and this scene are like the end. Yu Shiwu asked, "Is this one of templates, paradigms for you to build the fairy house on the mountain?" Qin Pingon nodded and said, "So compared with ordinary female nuns, there are more decorations in the house, which is a bit bloated and complicated, but it is still in line with her current identity, age and mood." 17 years old before she went up the mountain, was born in a top wealthy family. After going up the mountain, she was pampered by the elders of the teacher's family. She often went down the mountain to practice. Money doesn't blink, just buy. In recent years, she has often complained about herself. She has always disliked her skin being a little darker and her eyebrows are a little thicker, and she feels that she is not good enough. The disfigurement of her is even more said. A senior sister once warned her not to try to touch that face. Ordinary weak people, as well as those who practice martial arts in the rivers and lakes, tend to lose their spirits when they speak frequently, while those who go to the mountains to cultivate immortals belong to the category of for a good fate. You can't even touch the facial features of a face, so once the fundamentals are touched in the long run, it is destined to be a loss-making business that is not worth the gain. Yu Shiwu casually picked up a small Ganoderma powder box made of seed material carved with deer and Ganoderma on the dressing table. "Where are the tools?" Qin Ping said with a smile. "I asked a very important and good question. You always like to say that you are not familiar with the world and common affairs. You are too modest." Yu Shiwu said, "Thanks to you, I have been able to travel here for thousands of years. No matter how inattentive I am to the things around me, there are always a few things that I will never forget." On the other side of the painting table, there is an inkstone screen with a red sandalwood frame, and a pair of white glazed porcelain incense sticks from Taisher and Shaosher. On the other side of the window frame, there are 3 porcelain pots of narcissus placed side by side. Can be said to be dazzling and wonderful. Yu Shiwu glanced past. "They all have their origins?" Qin Pingon nodded and said, "They all have their own inheritance and stories. As for valuable antiques, the most important thing is an orderly spread. If there is no background story, it is not so important. It's worth a lot of money. For example, on the table is a Mayutang treasured bridge-ear burner, also known as the Phoenix Eye burner, engraved with 3 characters Jiang Yangzi. It was given to the first generation of the Imperial Academy by the founding emperor, and it is a family heirloom of her family. The jade bamboo fan bestowed by the teacher has 18 arhats engraved on one side of the fan bone, which is lifelike. The other side is engraved with words. "The peach is strong and 3,000 years old, and the bottom of the pen can bloom in an instant. I have eaten it on the top and I am still drunk for a day." Shoumei and Mingji, respectively, are the few masters of bamboo carving in the dynasty. Among them, the most valuable one, she thought it was the incense burner, but it is not. The bronze vanity mirror that I bought at a side stall was engraved with the word Wuxian. Belongs to the kind of heretical magic weapon, and one day in the future she will know that the ancient mirror is a secret place of cloud and rain that can be both charming and beautiful, and also mysterious in Taoism. Yu Shiwu was amazed. "Actually, this is the one that takes the most time." Qin Pingon threw Yu Shiwu a picture album of ladies. After Yu Shiwu took it, he opened it and found that every page was painted with the same beautiful woman, but with different styles of makeup, hairpins and dresses. Yu Shiwu didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but Qin Pingon said seriously, Food, housing and transportation should come first, and you can't be sloppy." Yu Shiwu probably couldn't stand the strong smell of makeup here, so he put down the album, opened the window and looked into the distance and murmured, "Qin Pingon, if I knew this, I wouldn't have conflicted with you if I killed you." Qin Ping smiled and said, "I'm overwhelmed." Qin Pingon picked up the album that Yu Shiwu had put back in its place and asked casually, "Yu Shiwu, do you have a special sense of accomplishment?" Yu Shiwu shook his head and said, I look at cultivation, it's relatively light and I can't get too excited about doing anything. Jinwu Mountain has its own inheritance. hope or ambition how to meet or achieve. Qin Pingon, how about you? Qin Ping said with a smile. When I was young, I didn't need to look at the price when I bought books casually. And when I met an expert on the road, I could feel calm. Yu Shiwu nodded and said, we must compare pennies and bots, earn money stingily, spend thousands of dollars, spend money generously, choose or reject, and feel very happy. As if remembering something, Yu Shiwu smiled. There is a gossip that a young hermit official was fighting outside that city. He used to dress up as a woman, conceal the truth, and earn merit by killing the enemy? Qin Pingon didn't even deny it and said without shame, people in the Jiang who don't stick to trifles. I remember that it was Lu Ji who leaked the inside story at the Sword Qi Great Wall first. Good things don't go out and foreign affairs spread thousands of miles. In order to eliminate the influence of this rumor, Qin Pingon also figured out a method similar to adding water to the wine, which was to let Lin Junbai and those handsome boys who looked at the blue sky with white eyes follow suit. But unfortunately they were all rejected. Qin Pingon asked, where did you hear the gossip? Who is so well informed? Naturally, Yu Shiwu would not be foolish enough to divulge the source of the news and joked, this is to block the door first and then gag. If we can't reach an agreement, we will kill people to silence it? Qin Pingon said helplessly, it won't happen. Yu Shiwu put away his smile and said in a deep voice, think it over, I'm willing to use this place as a place for cultivating Taoism, whether it's fleeing from disaster or changing my life, I will believe you once. Shall I swear? Qin Ping waved his hand. Some people swear to God is useless, but some people are more useful than swearing, and you belong to the latter. Yu Shiwu probably untied his heart knot, and his temperament changed, which made his eyebrows brighter, and said with a smile, I can trust myself, but I can't completely trust Qin Shanju. You have to swear. Qin Ping laughed it off. This time it's rare to speak from your heart. Let me tell you in advance that hiding here is not a perfect solution. At most it is an extra layer of buffer. First, I can only try to ensure that you will not die, and that you will not be killed because of someone deliberately. To hinder the return of that existence to its original owner, let you die suddenly one day or be forced to walk away, or use some means that you and I can't think of now, one step in advance, and deal with Yu Shiwa's real body, soul, and those 3 martial arts are all just to prevent that existence from returning to the peak and being able to replenish the body. These are aimed at conspirators. Second, if the righteous master comes to you and asks you for debts, I can only say to help you mediate, make a negotiation and try to get him to agree to keep all your mind and memory. 10,000 years ago, the first military solution in the strict sense of the world was the first ancestor of the military family who had both the merit of opening the sky and the fault of splitting. 5 copies, his soul was imprisoned 10,000 years. Martial arts in the world began with this person. According to the clues obtained by Qin Pingon and his own derivation, there is a piece of martial arts hidden in the underwater lotus root shrine in Qingming Xianxia. In addition, Yu Shiwu inherited one of the martial arts passed down from generation to generation in the family. The Confucian temple instructed Jiang and Wei, the 2 old patriarchs of the ancestral military families of the Central Plains, to donate the other 2 copies of martial arts to Yu Shiwu of Zhenwu Mountain. The last part of martial arts belonged to somewhere in the Western Buddhist kingdom. It is obvious that once Aquarius continent is captured by the wild monsters, Cui Chan will break the can and smash the table directly. Whether he does it himself or persuades the Confucian temple, he will finally get the ancestors of the 3 religions to nod. In short, Cui Chan must have the means to win in the future. The remaining 2 copies of martial arts will all belong to Yu Shiwu. At that time, Yu Shiwu will be used as an existence similar to a fairy, like the soul of the first military ancestor who is responsible for picking up and leaving prison early. In short, it is to let the latter come to the world, to make in order to end the captivity early and make up for the reward of the martial arts. The first ancestor of the military family entertained guests in Luzhou or Nambuswazu in Beiju. Once the first ancestor of the military family appears, returns to the human world and is willing to help the Hauran world, I believe it will be of great significance, no less than Baiz's return to the wild world. Yu Shiwu was very open-minded and said calmly, I know that in my heart those martial arts are rooted in the soul, and it is difficult for anyone to have the best fortune, so I don't dare to hope for the integrity of the body and soul. Only as long as it allows me to retain most of the memory. For example, this face now is quite natural after getting used to it. Qin Pingon nodded and said, if you can think this way, I will feel much more relaxed. Yu Shiwu asked, Since this is a fair deal, what do you want from me? Qin Pingon said, you need to do two things. The first one is very simple, that is, you and the other two friends must use your brains and cooperate sincerely to gradually improve this small world. Yu Shiwu nodded and said, I enjoyed it. What about the second thing? Qin Ping asked back, have you ever learned boxing? Yu Shiwu was at a loss, feeling baffled, and smiled wryly. Before I knew the truth, I wasn't interested in learning boxing. After knowing the truth, of course, I didn't dare to learn boxing. Qin Pingon said, fellow Daoist, let me tell you a harsh truth. You cultivators don't have the intention of turning your back on others. Are you being too reckless and betraying your talent? Yu Shiwu smiled and said, assuming it was you, would we have a fight? Qin Pingon smiled without saying a word and just took a step forward, leading Yu Shiwu away from the Xianxia mansion, and went straight to the blue-colored place in the ruins. By the riverside, he called the two women to him. I'll introduce you to each other. This is Yu Shiwu fellow. They are wild female cultivators whose real name is Xiao Xing, cooks of the Ma Mansion, and whose pseudonym is Yu Qing. Next, I will let go of most of the restrictions, allowing you to freely come and go in most of the worlds of illusion. In this way, there are 3 of the 5 elements. Yu Qing's expression was numb, muddled, like a walking corpse. It was really a bleak situation to live like years. On the other hand, Xiao Xing's eyes were hot, and he finally had another person to chat with to relieve boredom. Qin Pingon quietly removed the flowing water of time from Yu Qing's body, which instantly made Yu Qing's consciousness clear when she escaped from the invisible cage. Just because she couldn't adapt for a while, she sat slumped on the ground, gasping for breath and sweating profusely. Xiao Xing wanted to help, but was immediately reprimanded by Yu Qing. Xiao Xing smiled flamboyantly. She pointed to the plump woman as if asking for credit, and said to Qin Pingon and Yu Shiwu that she was not thinking of being a sword. Well, Xiao, with good intentions, I helped her create a high-ranking natal flying sword. The name was already thought up and it was called Poison Wine. Seeing this, Yu Shiwu felt a little headache and he will spend time with them from now on. Qin Pingon handed them some golden leaves. It is not only the location of the illusion world, but also the key to open the door. Qin Pingon smiled and said, take advantage of the weather to make up for leaks and study while you are young. If you don't know what you don't know, you will always pretend to understand. Only by learning and asking can you learn. You all encourage each other. If a person's memory is the sustenance of all emotions, then every vein on these leaves carries the joys and sorrows of thousands of stories. It may be that the donkey fell into the well for no reason, or it may be that the wind and the moon are whirling together. Above the head of the Sword Qi Great Wall, Ma Kuxuan walked slowly in the snow and said with a smile, the opportunity is rare. While I am talking, you have nothing to ask. To be honest, some old almanacs, the truth I know, let Yu Qin Ping go through it again and again. No matter how knowledgeable you are, it may not be I know. Sure enough, Qin Pingon asked, why don't you major in Lei Fa? Wouldn't it be more effective with half the effort? Because Qin Pingon was almost sure that the old coachman hiding in the capital of Dali was the chief officer of the ancient Thunder Division. God, and he obviously bet the most on Ma Kuxuan in Xinghua Lane and had the most high hopes. Obviously, Ma Kuxuan is undoubtedly the reincarnation of a high ranking in the Leibu. Among the many sound categories in the world, the most turbulent one is thunder. I remember that there was a high ranking who descended from the sky on the land of Tongyi's Hao, and then crossed the sea and landed on Aquarius continent, but was finally defeated by Cui Chan and Qi Jingchun. There was one of the 12 high-ranking echoes. Ma Kuxuan also didn't hide anything and said, based on my previous body and roots, plus the aptitude for cultivating Taoism in this life, does Ma Kuxuan still need to practice any thunder method in this life? That is, Long Hushan Celestial Master, the government does not know the goods. Otherwise it was that Zhao Tianlai who had figured out the truth. But unfortunately he was thin-skinned and refused to lower his posture to ask me for advice. Otherwise I really wouldn't mind helping them raise the 5 thunders to a higher level. Qin Pingon was speechless for a moment. Ma Kuxuan was delighted. It was rare for this guy to be deflated once. Raising his hands and shaking his sleeves, Ma Kuxuan brushed away a large expanse of falling snow in front of his eyes, and there appeared 2 kinds of silk thread, one gold and one silver. Each erratic silver line represents each voice of the heart, which can be traces produced face to face, or the 2 sides do not need to look at each other at all, completely ignoring geographical distance, and can freely travel through the long river of time. Echoing each other from a distance is to draw a line. Therefore, the voice of chi fighters of later generations, and the gathering of voices of warriors into a line, are rooted in the communication between ancient gods and gods, which can span countless stars. There are taboos on the mountain. You can't directly call saints and 14-level monks by name. The latter is easy to feel the heart, and it is actually an extension of this vein. If every star in the sky is a corpse of a floating in the long river of time, it is scattered and then condensed. Then the voice of heart communication between the ancient gods can ignore that these 14 great monks may be poor. There is a certain distance that cannot be reached from here to there in life. Ma Kuxuan continued, as for the echoer who came to Aquarius Island from Tongyi's Hao, this move can be regarded as a kind of solicitation from Zhou, but I refused, and we both agreed that Zhou didn't appreciate me. He no longer forced to avoid extra problems and hinder his ascension to the sky to leave. The gain outweighs the loss. Although Qin Pingon said that his background was not good enough, but this guy first got Qi Jingchun's preaching, acting as a teacher and accepting apprentices, then Cui Chan protected the way, then Lu Shilu punched in Luopa Mountain, and when he arrived at the Great Wall of Sword Qi he taught him left and right. Swordsmanship is still with the asylum of the sage of literature who restored the god's position in the Confucian temple. The old scholar protected the chicks like an old hen. Such treatment seen all over the world. Who has it? Just like some belated onlookers, they would always say sourly, if I were the young hermit official surnamed Qin, with this blessing, let alone the 5 realms, I would have already ascended to the Ascension realm. Ma Kuxuan's eyes were gloomy. Didn't Qi Jingchun also point out a way for you that suits you? If you hadn't said I follow the crowd earlier, I would have scolded you for not knowing the blessings. Ma Kuxuan asked, you returned to the upper 5 realms, is this the way? Qin Pingon shook his head. No. To be a little more difficult is to ask for trouble. Ma Kuxuan glanced at Qin Pingon to make sure that the other party did not fool him. Qi Jingchun integrated the civil and military luck and incense of the Lizhu cave heaven, and entered the realm of the unity of heaven and man. With a breath of arrogance he visualized and copied the complete appearance of a severely damaged Taoist statue in the Immortal tomb, and finally presented his posture, is a god-man wearing an old colorful armor, who creates the soul with secret methods, and then stabilizes the soul with Buddhist supernatural powers, implying to live in this 4th flame of wisdom, so even though the light is extinguished, the lamp furnace still exists. A master of the integration of the 3 religions. This is like a letter Qi Jingchun sent home to the future, or a kind of silent last words. But like what Zhou said at the time, your choice Qi Jingchun is not the best. That being the case, Qi Jingchun must have far-reaching intentions. It's just that Qin Pingon still chose his own way to break through the situation, opened up a brand new way. Seeing that Ma Kuxuan stopped talking as if he had lost the interest in speaking, Qin Pingon made it clear. It seems that the fellow is reminiscing about the old days, but in fact he wants to talk to me a little more in a different way. In fact, I know very well that you want me to say more character. Ma Kuxuan admitted this generously and smiled. I know you are very smart and I am not stupid. But I am curious, when did you realize this? The saints of the 3 religions have the heavenly constitution in their mouths, and their words follow the law. There is also a more mysterious saying on the mountain which is inspired by the gods. Since this illusory world is doomed to be false, and Qin Pingon is like a saint in command of the world, taking advantage of the right time and place, then Ma Kuxuan needs to have some extra real things to avoid his following the crowd, for example, speech. The question and answer between the 2 sides is a knot of words twisted into words. In their hometown, the old people like to say that they are getting old and dying, and they like to say that they are as old as a bodhisattva. And when it is used to describe a child who doesn't understand the world and does things in a muddle, he will say, how can he look like a person in heaven? The outside world regards Ma Kuxuan as a genius among geniuses, so he refuses to put effort into everything, but it is enough to make him stand out. This is due to talent. What's more, in fact, Ma Kuxuan didn't waste any of his talent. On the contrary, Ma Kuxuan didn't slack off in these years, waiting for Qin Pingon for a long time. Inviting the tiger Tong Wenchong to come to the small courtyard in the capital earlier, in addition to helping to introduce the female ghost Shui Rui, it is also a test and measurement of Qin Pingan's authenticity of the illusion. It seems that the 2 people of the same age from the same township are not fuel-efficient lamps. Qin Pingon asked with a smile, do you want to chat a little more? Ma Kuxuan said, no, it's enough. Except for the flying sword of flying sword, which has nothing to do with words. Qin Pingan may not be able to use it at the moment, such as martial arts involving boxing scores, and techniques in Taoist secret books. Didn't everyone say that the last hermit official of the Great Wall of Sword Qi didn't have a high realm, but did he have a lot of means? Don't you, Qin Pingan, want to fight my Ma Kuxuan with a martial arts master today? Then try it out. Ma Kuxuan raised his hand and patted his neck lightly, squinted his eyes and said with a smile, "One by one I'm full, but you're going to starve." Qin Pingan said, "If it doesn't belong to you, you can't keep it. You have to spit it out and return it obediently." Ma Kuxuan stood on the spot and hooked his fingers towards Qin Pingan. Yunmo, the immortal of Jiuzhen Immortal Hall, his ability to press the bottom of the box is in the realm of cloud water body and water essence. When he sees me, he has to call ancestor. I stood, "Don't move here." I don't know what supernatural power it is. Ma Kuxuan instantly stepped into a realm of nothingness like an empty boat. The next moment Ma Kuxuan felt as if he had been hit by a hammer, his body bent and he retched. It is both swordsmanship and boxing. Named Turbulent Flow. The blood that Ma Kuxuan vomited at the moment was all broken golden characters. Then Ma Kuxuan was pressed down on the face with one hand and grabbed his shoulder with the other, and with a click his neck was twisted. A corpse fell to the ground. Qin Ping stood where he was, turned his head to look elsewhere, and with a wave of his sleeves, scattered all the golden characters that contained moral meaning. If Ma Kuxuan could be killed so easily, it wouldn't be Ma Kuxuan. Crouching far away from the city, Ma Kuxuan looked at that guy with pity. "Qin Pingan, I have actually taken in a closed-door disciple who has little grudge against you but hates you deeply. You don't even know where his hatred comes from. As long as you don't become a 15th level monk for a day, you will never know who he is, and you can't guess how he will take revenge on you in the future and how many times he will take revenge on you." Ma Kuxuan jumped down from the top of the wall, jumped a few times, stretched his muscles and bones and lazily said, "Now that the warm-up is over, it's time to get down to business." In the next scene with Qin Pingan's heart, he still couldn't help but scold him a bitch. It turned out that Ma Kuxuan was afraid that the world would not be chaotic, so he actually used some kind of side door visualization method to create Show me out of thin air. At the ruins of the Immortal Mansion, Qin Ping led Yu Shiwu up the steps of the mountain road. Yu Shiwu noticed that the brows of the people around him were frowning and then relaxed and asked, "What's going on?" Qin Pingan stopped, turned around and sat on the steps and said with a smile, "It's nothing, the Tao is 1 foot tall and the devil is 10 feet tall." Sitting aside, Yu Shiwu said, "In Jinwu Mountain, a senior once told me a truth. He advised me to set up 1 or 2 imaginary enemies on the road of cultivation in the future." Qin Pingan nodded and said, "It makes sense." She guessed who it was. It was Ma Kuxuan's guardian, who had been to Liju Cave and had met several times before. Yu Shiwu asked, "You have one too?" Qin Ping smiled and said, "Of course, for example, if you want to have a courteous reciprocity with a certain senior swordsman Pei Min. Come and not reciprocate indecently. The natal flying sword cages the bird." Here, as long as Qin Pingan's realm is high enough, his aura is enough, and his long sword is sharp enough, then time and space can be cut infinitely. In short, even now, as long as Qin Ping wants, he can make Qi practitioner Yu Shiwu never catch up with an ant crawling on the ground. Yu Shiwu said, "You haven't said what the second thing is." Qin Ping smiled and said, "He'll use you to catch up with Chao Ci." Yu Shiwu asked puzzledly, "What do you mean?" Qin Pingan said, "Practice boxing." Yu Shiwu understood instantly and was speechless. Sure enough, Qin Pingan removed the blindfold and the real body of Yu Shiwu was far away and close in front of him. It turns out that I don't know how many other people's intentional words, but they are all regarded as unintentional words by us. Yu Shiwu had a complicated expression. Is this to deal with Ma Kuxuan? As the first ancestor of the military family, the 3 martial arts skills are of course useless to Yu Shiwu, a Qi trainer, but if he is controlled by the martial arts master Qin Pingan, is it equivalent to directly stepping over 1 or 2 martial arts steps and helping him reach the ultimate level? Some joint titles in the world are not used indiscriminately. There are 2 Qin Pingan around him, such as Nan Shaoqin Baingwen on the battlefield, or Qin in white clothes Chao Qingshan on the road of martial arts. Qin Ping raised his eyes and looked into the distance, shook his head and smiled, "No need at all." Sword of Coming Chapter 1093. There is continuous rain in the mountains and the vegetation knows spring best. In the wine shop at the foot of the mountain that was renamed Jiao Mountain, Song Wei, the goddess of the mountain who changed her name along with her own mountain, performed the Qi Wangqi technique to overlook the capital of Yushuan Kingdom. She no longer cared about worrying about Ma Shi's fate, she was just worried that her Jiao Mountain was adjacent to the capital, and she was afraid of being affected, but she didn't know how much storm the previous group would cause in the capital, and she was afraid that the mountains would collapse and the ground would be cracked at every turn. When the gods fight, the two sides don't stop once they start fighting. Those three drinkers who had taken shelter from the rain before, Lu Xianyang, the current patriarch of Longquan Sword Sect, Gu Ken, the direct successor of Mr. Zheng in Baidi City, and Pei Qian, one of the four great masters of Aquarius Island, none of them had been thought of before. Dare to think of a top-notch person in a continent, regardless of identity and strength. Song Wei is a female mountain after all, so she admires the young but famous Master Pei the most. If it weren't for the accident in Yushuan Kingdom today, how happy is Song Wei to be able to drink in his own shop? Song Wei sighed faintly, envious of those water colleagues nearby. At least she could avoid the storm a little bit. She raised the corner of her skirt, revealing a pair of embroidered shoes, lamenting that the golden statue of the temple in the mountain does not have long legs. At this moment, an old man with the appearance of a farmer appeared at the door out of thin air, and Song Wei was so frightened that he was about to kneel down and salute on the spot. After all, this is the boss of his immediate boss, and the ranks of the gods of the two sides are too different. The person who came is the mountain king of Zhou Xian. Now it's time to honor Tong Wenchang, who is called the god. With his hands behind his hands, he crossed the threshold first and said, "I don't talk about business today, don't be restrained, just find a place to drink. You are the host and I am the guest." After Song Wei was shocked, he felt relieved and immediately relaxed his frown. With Tong Xinjun here, the temple of her little mountain must be worry-free. In the capital city, Gu Can used the magical power of shrinking the ground, left the palace in one step, and went straight to the vicinity of Qin Tianjian. He didn't say hello to the maidservant in name, but just walked around the street shop here alone like a tourist. In a bookstore that sells rare books, she casually searched through the books, chose a fairy book named by a certain real person, and placed it in a prominent position for the shopkeeper. In the market, such books are still relatively unsold, so Gu Can flipped through it casually. The first page is about how the fairy in the mountain cooks several kinds of medicinal food. According to the book, the mountain and wild offerings of the fairy family are very mysterious. Light and agile over time, diners can be as light as a leaf, walk as fast as flying, and cross mountains and rivers as if walking on flat ground. Gu Can smiled and shook her head. Qi practitioners went to the mountains to practice Taoism. How can it be so simple to achieve the level of lightness and body movement? However, there is a commentary in the book that is not bad, which is equivalent to telling the truth after discovering the secret of heaven. Guzhen made elixir and gathered medicine to make mountains and rivers pour. There was a charming woman who walked into the shop slowly, staggered intentionally, twisted her waist and fell into Gu Can's arms. Gu Can didn't lift her head, but put her hand against the woman's forehead and pushed it away. The bookseller on the side stared wide-eyed. "I never thought that this customer who only looks but doesn't buy is still a gentleman. If it were me, I would also reach out to support, and in a panic I was not sure that I would hold down the bowtie's delicate body." The woman stood up straight, covered her mouth and said with a coquettish smile, "Young master, is this trip safe?" Gu Can turned a deaf ear to it and just asked the shopkeeper, "Does the shop sell the imprints of the 100 Sword Immortals?" The shopkeeper was confused and asked curiously, "Which master of gold and stone compiled it? Dare I ask if it is the original seal copy or the engraved copy?" Gu Can smiled, put down the book in her hand and left the shop with Gu Lingyu, walking along an opposite street. In a secluded alley, I had a rough look at the harvest of Gu Lingjia's trip, collected it together and gave a moderate evaluation. "It's okay." Gu Lingyi took out a square-inch object in the shape of a mountain ghost's money from his sleeve, smiled and said, "There's this one." Gu Can asked, "What?" Gu Lingyu said, "They are all old almanacs from different years and some are professional books related to almanacs. I'm not good at counting them. I get a headache when I look at them, so I put them all in my hand." Kin parted out a piece of consciousness, inspected the storage, and Huaqian glanced roughly, only took out some thin booklets from it and threw the square-inch thing back to her. "The rest of the almanac, give it all back to Qin Tianjian Go." Since ancient times, dynasties in the world have had rules for compiling and issuing almanacs. There are some good people on the mountain who like to collect this and treasure almanacs of different dynasties and different years. But what Gukin left behind is only the ones that were surveyed and compiled by the predecessors. The legal calendar and some accompanying corrections of the sun and moon tables seem to be not interested in the almanac. Seeing her face full of unwillingness, Gukin explained to her roughly, according to the market, if you collect if you don't read your son's almanac, you will be rewarded at home. Gu Lingyu blinked. What do you mean? Gukin said, it's just that the house is prone to flooding and fire. Gu Lingyan asked, is it true? Gukin said, for some things, it is better to believe what they have than to believe what they don't have. There is no need to test the law to verify the authenticity. It seems that he is in a good mood, and it is rare for Gukin to say a few words on her side. If you encounter Xingchang as a result of flood disasters, the imperial courts of various countries will invite a complete set of Jiazi almanacs to suppress the victory. Therefore, Qin Tianjian is used to store the records of various dynasties. In the place of almanac there is particularity. For example, a certain word in the name is usually a radical of water, such as yuan, su, jin, and so on. She nodded like a chicken pecking rice. Gukin asked suddenly, where did this mountain ghost spend money? Gu Lingji smiled sweetly and said, in the wild world there are also fairy family ferry crossings and marketplaces, okay? I'm not allowed to step on dog to catch a leak. The mountain ghost is to distinguish it from the orthodox mountain god. Ask the mountain ghosts who have been enlightened by the Taoist temple to spend money, and it is regarded as a pure yang thing, which can be used as a townhouse or a hanging pendant. Even on the mountain this kind of money is very popular because there is no concern that it is easy to invite the gods and difficult to send the gods away, so it works well to open the furnace and store the warehouse. Gukin said, it's worth some money, keep it well. Gu Lingyan asked, my lord, you still haven't thought about choosing a good site for the sect? Gukin nodded, it's not a trivial matter anyway, there is no rush, just look at a few more places. Gu Lingyan laughed and said, in the final analysis, the young master is just hesitant and undecided. He does not hesitate to fight against Lingfei Palace, but also wants to get a foot in the door, and by the Hehuan mountain boundary that is said to be Xiaxijian Lake from the Qingxingguo court. It's impossible for Gukin to think that money is hot. In the final analysis, it was Gukin who hesitated, an impulse, and wanted to do something after choosing the sect in the Hehuan mountain boundary so as to prove something to someone. It's just that reason told him that this choice was an idiotic move that didn't care about his brain. Gukin didn't want to talk about this with her, so she turned her mind to other things and laughed to herself. She asked curiously, young master, what fun thing did you think of? Gukin smiled and said, Aquarius Island is okay, the news is blocked and I know there are not many things. The flowers bloom inside the wall and the fragrance outside the wall. In other places, there are some. It's very interesting to say that everyone thinks that he is from a scholarly family, and he has been full of poetry and books since he was a child. It's fun, look at the Baihu notation, how can it be commoner language? She covered her mouth and smiled, which was really funny. Gukin continued, even if you know his general background and know that he is a mud-legged person, you can still say what it is called a noble son from a poor family and a nobleman from a white house. It must be Chenjun made great contributions to the world when he was young. Thinking of these kind words, Gukin wanted to laugh. She said cautiously, if it wasn't for the Zhongtu Confucian temple deliberately concealing it, let alone the respectful name Chenjun, there are people who respectfully call it Chenzi, right? Gukin laughed it off. Young master, have you ever thought about what kind of person you must become in this life? I just think about who I don't want to be. Give me an example. For example, your kind of embroidered pillow that is not useful. My son, whether it is useful or not, you haven't tried it. It was raining and the ground was flowing and there were fights at the head of the bed and fights at the end of the bed. When they arrived at one place, seeing Gukin not moving forward, Gu Lingying asked suspiciously, my lord, what is this? Gukin said, wait for someone, make an appointment to meet here. Gu Lingyu became more and more curious. Is there an expert hiding in the palace? Gukin said, there are not so many loopholes to pick up. The national teacher Huang Lai Jindan, I recruited him to be the sect's enshrinement. He is familiar with the customs on the mountain and the rules of the officialdom. He can help with some common affairs. Gu Lingyan asked, need? Gukin said, of course the White Emperor City doesn't need it, but my sect needs it. There is a custom of coming here to release animals. A pavilion was built beside the water pool, and an ancient mirror was hung on the forehead of the pavilion. The couplets were very mottled and old. It is rumored that every moonlit night, the water surface here is particularly bright and sparkling. It seems that it is indeed as the couplet said, not a lie. Just now Gukin didn't go into the gazebo, but stopped at the entrance of a nearby Taoist temple. It was mixed in the bustling city, but it was a cold temple with no incense, the kind that ordinary masters would miss when passing by. Gu Lingyi looked at the Taoist temple with a small door. The door couplet here is also strange. There are spirits and gods in it, and I don't know who is cast. It's more like half a couplet of text. Gu Lingyu instantly understood. Could it be that the couplet with the gazebo is called a couplet together? As a result, Gu Lingyue took a high-level look at this deserted Taoist temple called Chongyang. But it was a pity that she didn't know the art of looking at qi and couldn't see more ways. She doesn't take it seriously that people live in seclusion here to practice Taoism, not to mention the lack of attention. Firstly, the aura in Guanyin is thin, and secondly, what is a master of Taoism? She herself is a jade with excellent qualifications. Could it be that there are immortals sitting in it and Feixing can't make alchemy here? She turned her head to look, and there came a not-so-young Jindan Earth Immortal. Is it the master of this Taoist temple? Gukin smiled and asked, is the handover over? Huang Lai nodded and said, according to your order I told Shui Peng the truth. When I heard that it was you, I didn't dare to say anything with a shit-eating expression on my face. Suddenly realizing that this metaphor seems a little inappropriate, the old man hurriedly smiled and said, excuse me for being careless. Anyway, both parties are polite, so it's easy to get together and leave. Gukin said, you can speak casually in the future. Shui Peng can tolerate a national teacher who has lice and taken off his boots, but my tolerance is always slightly bigger than him. Huang Lai said with a smile, it's a good feeling. On the way here I was still struggling. Will I be deceived by Gu Zhongzhu and turn my face and deny anyone? Gukin shook his head and said, you still don't know about our Baidi city. Outside rumors spread false rumors, so it is not accurate. In Baidi city the native genealogy monks went out to do things and the road was relatively wild. Shan Xiaxiu who entered the city halfway. On the contrary, the rules are heavy. Huang Lai said cautiously, if I have the chance to go to Baidi city to watch the lanterns, I can just get a general look. I am really curious and yearning, and I have been fascinated for a long time. Gukin said, in the future the threshold of Baidi city will only become higher and higher. This matter is indeed not easy, but it can be discussed. For example, we can wait until you enter the nascent soul realm. Gu Lingyan seemed to have just discovered that there was such a number one person. With a sweet smile he said in a strange way, oh, it's amazing, it's actually an old Jindan fairy. Huang Lai laughed and said, Yu. Gukin glanced at her and reminded, speak humanly. She obviously listened to persuasion, so she leaned sideways and poured a blessing. This servant is effective. I have seen the senior. The servant has only been with the young master for a short time, and I don't know the rules and etiquette. I implore the senior to make amends. Gukin introduced. She is now aliased as Lingyu, and she was born in a wild monster clan. She is in the Jade realm and has good aptitude. Huang Lai wasn't surprised at all. City Lord Jing, his old man's senior apprentice, can't show some pomp when he goes out? But it's just a personal maid with a Jade realm, so there is no need to make a fuss at all. Thinking about it this way, Lao Jindan couldn't help but feel melancholy. This seemingly weak young woman in front of him is after all an unattainable Jade realm. The key is that she comes from the wild world. Huang Lai couldn't help asking curiously, what kind of person is Qin Shanzhu? Just like Baidi city, the real scene inside is very different from the rumors outside? Gukin smiled and said, there's no need to repeatedly use him to beat me. Huang Lai's scalp tightened. Don't dare, Sect Master Gu misunderstood. Gukin said, then try not to misunderstand me. It wasn't until this moment that Huang Lai really understood the unique behavior style of the genealogy monks in Baidi city. Gu Lingyan smiled prettily. Gukin asked, where is it? Huang Lai said with a smile, this place used to be a family temple donated by dignitaries in history. It was called Alchemy Temple in ancient times, but now it's called Chongyang. Gukin nodded and said, I saw that the weather here is good before. Of course, compared to the capital city of Yushuan Kingdom, it is called Alchemy Temple. No wonder I think this is a good place for alchemy. This refinement is undoubtedly a water pill, and it is called Chongyang again, and it has a bit of gain. The giants smelt, the big furnace fan gold, the purple light is gradually emitted and the red energy is deep. It is estimated that there will be a person in the future. The so-called land gods. As for how long it will be in the future, whether it is decades or hundreds of years, I am a layman in the art of qi, so I don't know. Looking at qi is different from the general magical powers of the immortal family. It is also different from the so-called celestial eye. It is different from the foot and the magic. This method is similar to the talisman. The threshold is quite high and it pays attention to the talents and roots of Daoist. Success or failure, it seems that it is not determined by manpower but only determined by heaven. Only the gods of mountains and rivers are the obscene temples that are not sealed by the court, but they have molded golden bodies and erected temples, and they can immediately master this way. Qin Tianjian from all over the world, in addition to those wandering around Fang's strange people, fortune-tellers and the like. Huang Lai said, "Go in and ask for a cup of tea?" Guqin shook her head, "Go shopping elsewhere, it doesn't matter where you go. The world of mortals is full of mortals, infecting the human body, the melting pot of heaven and earth, casting and refining golden pills. Everyone in the world says that gods are good, and that a golden elixir will guarantee longevity. It's just that if you don't know how difficult it is to cultivate, your heart may be turned into ashes." Stopping along the way, worrying about the willow colors, chasing the depth of spring. In Qin Pingan's mind world. On the top of the city, standing behind Ma Kuxuan, is Zhou, who looks like a deity in the mountains and rivers, with a shining golden body and a calm smile, as if he just missed saying goodbye. Although he knew it must be false, Qin Pingan was still in a strange mood, frowning and asked, "How did you do it?" The old Ma Kuxuan said, "Calling the soul." Ma Kuxuan's eyes were hot, as if there was a huge puzzle for Qin Pingan to solve. "Have you always had a good memory? Near the alley such things don't happen very often, have you forgotten?" The children were frightened and lost their souls, and their parents led them to walk in the streets and fields, calling names all the way so as to help the lost souls return home. "There are so many ancestral handicrafts in the world, lost inheritance, I just picked them up again, what's the effect? Did you jump?" To make Qin Yingguan Qin Zhenxian, who is used to seeing the big world, feel so jealous. "It is not in vain that I have spent so much deliberation here, and it is not a loss." Qin Pingan asked, "Have you thought about the consequences?" The relationship between heaven and man that monks in the world are thinking about is all about the resonance between man and heaven. Connect? Separated, descended to the earth? Born in case? Especially at the critical moment when the patriarchs of the three teachings have already dispersed. Ma Kuxuan seemed to have heard the funniest joke. "You have already killed me and you still persuade me not to smash the jar? Why do I keep this kind of killer weapon and use it when I go to the grave next year to worship my ancestors?" Qin Pingan was silent. Ma Kuxuan stared at the guy who had held grudges for so many years and said in a deep voice, "Now I give you two choices. Either you quit the Ma family immediately and the old enmity will be wiped out, and I will also persuade them to stop enjoying incense and sacrifices. The idea of achieving the immortality of the Shinto, the body will grow old day by day and die at the end of life. Either you will take the risk of dragging the whole world into the whirlpool and become my enemy in order to avenge your own personal revenge. Of course there is only this risk. Did not say the one who called the soul from behind must have such a great ability to bring disaster to the world. You can bet." Qin Pingan said, "You're thinking about it. What I call consequences has little to do with this world. I'm good at starting from scratch like a swallow and cleaning up messes. I'm talking about yourself, you just want Qingming next year so much, Ma Yenshan and Ma Yueme. How many glasses of wine are we toasting to your elder brother who they regard as the pillar of the family? Goddess Ma of Xinghua Lane, I have the grace of delivering the child. Your grandma may not miss the past, but I want to miss this love. In the final analysis, this matter is a business, one of the many businesses she has done, but when I was young I once heard people say that when my mother gave birth to me, the process was not easy and quite dangerous, so my father left the original Baoshi kiln as soon as he was invited back then, and went to your kiln to be a master burning porcelain, and accepting apprentices is to commemorate this kindness. Xing Ma's family has Xing Ma's tutor, and our Naipingxiangchen family also has our own family style. That's why I have been urging you, I urge you not to do things to the extreme and leave a way out for yourself. I can wait for you to come to me for revenge in the future." Ma Kuxuan was silent for a moment and said, "Then you're thinking about it too. I don't want to avenge them one day just because they gave birth to me. Clear up with them. So you come to the door for revenge and this is a deadlock between us. Why did I earn that bag of money when I was a teenager to deliberately leak the news that you and Ning Yao were hiding in the Immortal tomb? Would I be greedy for that bit of gold, fine copper? Why do I clearly think that you and I are fellow travelers, people of the same age in the entire Liju cave, and you are the most pleasing to the eye, but I deliberately aggravate the cause and effect of both parties, just so that you and I will meet one day so that we can separate life and death earlier, and don't have the slightest bit sloppy. No, whoever dies can settle the grievances between the two families together, but your performance today makes me very. Ma Kuxuan paused and then slowly said 2 words, disappointed. Qin Pingon said, Ma Kuxuan, it's not me who is struggling but you, because you have never recognized and accepted your roots. Deep down in your heart, you hate the kind of history you have clearly experienced and you can't see the fate of tomorrow. That's why you and Yu Shiwu, who are in the same situation, become the only friends. If you neither accept where you come from nor where you are going, you become a rootless duckweed in this world. Since you were wrong yesterday, you will make more mistakes tomorrow. So you have been waiting for today. Speaking of this, Qin Pingon took a deep breath, laughed, rolled up his sleeves. I know this kind of taste because that's how I came here. You're right, we are indeed on the same journey, at least the way of life there is a long way to go and they are all the same. Ma Kuxuan said, it's a pity that we are destined not to be friends. Then thoroughly let the long-awaited today be happier. Don't become the kind of Xianxia wine in your wine shop. Whoever drinks it will frown. I have drunk it, so I should find someone specially. I brought 2 pots with me, it was too bad. Qin Pingon smiled and said, this kind of stupid talk is not a person who likes to drink. Drinking depends on the place. In the wine shop you only need to take out a snowflake coin, pay the money with one hand and deliver the goods with the other hand, finish drinking on the spot and ask for a relationship with a friend. From the Great Wall of Sword Qi, through the Upside Down Mountain to Aquarius Island and to Jinwu Mountain, can the same drink taste the same? What you expect is not the taste of a snowflake money. Ma Kuxuan asked with a smile. Why are you so interested in talking all of a sudden? Qin Pingon pointed to the Zhou Mi, who was more than 2 feet tall. I don't want to see how long this dear friend can last. You are an immortal now realm. If you invite a 14th level illusion, you will definitely not want to waste a word with me, then I will avoid the battle and postpone it. If you are a thug with a cultivation level of ascension, with your temper because of your face at most be tough, if you have a scalp chat, you will interrupt me and I will fight in retreat. Now it seems that at most it's just a fake ascension immortal realm, but there are a few tricks of ascension realm under the box, lighting a stick of incense and personally descending into reality. The duration is quite long, so you are not in a hurry? Ma Kuxuan clicked his tongue and said, as expected of a swordsman, cheap is really cheap. There was a heavy snowfall in the sky, the snowflakes were dense, and it was unknown whether it was falling from the sky or rising to the sky. Ma Kuxuan heard that the sword cultivators of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, no matter how high or low their level, had no graves after death, and naturally there was no custom of worshipping ancestors. In this snow, the top of the city is like a tomb, and the endless snowflakes are like countless white paper money scattered to pay homage to the heroic spirit. People become ancient people and the earth becomes relics. It's all over. Ma Kuxuan smiled brightly and called out, Qin Pingon. Qin Pingon asked doubtfully, huh? In an instant visions abounded, and the entire sky condensed into a thunder pool, which was so powerful that it was like a catastrophe caused by a great monk's retreat. The lightning bolt turned a few times in midair, straightened in an instant, became more condensed and slender, and the Daoist rhyme contained in it was even more astonishing, like a golden flying sword hitting Qin Pingon. When the golden thunder was about to hit Qin Pingon's head, there was a vibration near the thunder pool in the sky. Qin Pingon didn't know whether he had no way to hide, or he wanted to weigh the weight of this thunder, but he didn't move. Punched upwards and thrust out, the tip of the sword exploded with a bang. Within a radius of hundreds of feet, countless golden flames burst out. The stars set off Qin Pingon as if he was in a house of fire made of swords and iron. It's just that this sword, or a thunderstorm from the sky, is not weaker than the full blow of a sword cultivator in the Jade Roll realm. And that Ma Kuxuan didn't use any spiritual energy at all, and there was no talisman in his hand to drive it, and he didn't need to chant spells to attract thunder. In total, the thunder is divided into 5 colors, which happens to circulate in the 5 elements, and it is endlessly growing. It is continuously differentiated in the thunder pool, and it does not give Qin Ping a breath, and it falls on the top of the city one after another. 5 thunders strike the top. This is a Taoist term. because it is too powerful and deeply rooted in the hearts of the people, the common people in the market as well as the green forest heroes on the rivers and lakes, always like to say if you break your oath, you will be punished by the shadow of the cloud above your head. Now the sky is thundering. Ma Kuxuan had already shrunk his veins and went to another place far away from the battlefield and said with a smile, "There are thousands of spells in the world which are mastered by Qi practitioners, but supernatural powers are my family's business." After resisting dozens of thunders, Qin Pingan's fist was bloody, bones were visible and his whole arm was numb for a while, so he had to shake his arm and the long string of electric lights still entangled around his arm, like a dozen snow-white electric snakes being caught by Qin Pingan. Shake and fall to the ground. Qin Ping was a little surprised. Why didn't Ma Kuxuan take the opportunity to throw out a few more thunder magic powers? In the previous words, when talking about the Heavenly Master's mansion in Longhu Mountain, Ma Kuxuan seemed to speak wildly. He didn't think highly of the Five Thunders Dharma in the Heavenly Master's mansion. He even felt that he was qualified to teach Zhou Tianlai the true meaning of the Thunder Law. Zhou Xian's eyes are higher than the top, but also I don't think I am superior to Zhou Tianlai in terms of skill attainment, but Ma Kuxuan belongs to the reincarnation of the gods, and he came from the thunder department of the ancient heaven. Ma Kuxuan smiled and said, "I don't even need to give you a chance to breathe on purpose. I am so arrogant. Instead, I want to take the opportunity to sharpen my fist and temper my body. You martial arts masters of the 10 realms are really amazing. I envy you so much." As he spoke, Lei Qi Tianjia became more and more low-key, and his overwhelming momentum was suffocating. The vast thunder pool that has accumulated countless ancient Taoism is like a deep pool of water. Ma Kuxuan used his great supernatural power to separate a ditch and lead it to Qin Pingan. Created a pattern as if the wellhead was poured with river water. It was formed in one go and the thunder and lightning were as thick as slurry. Because the lightning fell too frequently, the roads were connected continuously. Just stick it on the drum. Not to mention Qin Pingan, who was in the middle of the game. Ma Kuxuan was so shocked that his chest felt tight, and he stretched out his hand gently rubbing his ears and sneered, "The illusion of the heart is a fake in the end." It turned out that the great wall of sword chi had been collapsed by hundreds of lightning strikes, and the bright red mustard seed figure was standing in the ruins. Among them continued to fight the catastrophe with both fists, and with each punch the surrounding area is surrounded by hundreds of millions of flames and a splendid scene. It's hard to tell whether it's a sea of fire or a star-studded sky in the boundless void. Do you still dare to say that you only use martial arts to fight against the enemy? Are you really not going to use the land shrinking technique in the sword escape method? I'd like to see how long Master Jijia's breath of pure true energy can last. According to Ma Kuxuan's calculations, when Qin Pingan takes a breath, before the connection between the old and the new, he will be rewarded with another immortal hand. As a cultivator, the human body is originally a blessed land, and the flesh, muscles and bones are mountains and rivers. The so-called practice is to use a long life bridge to connect the cave and sky, to temper the spirit inside. Buddhists say that human life is rare and it has never been a lie. All beings in the world regard human beings as the leader of all spirits. Why do all the enlightened monster races on the earth have to strive to become human bodies? Naturally, it is profitable. With a human body, one can achieve twice the result with half the effort. In a sense, the human race is the gods of freedom. The scale of this heavenly tribulation thunderpool, it is reasonable to say that it can completely suppress a Jade Roar realm swordsman, kill him, turn him into dust, and even his soul will be wiped out, so there is no need to talk about the afterlife. Allowing the great monks on the top of the mountain to enter and exit the Fengdu Hades, if they want to save the situation, they are still in vain. With this unique supernatural power, killing a Jade or seriously injuring an immortal is already the ultimate manpower of Ma Kuxuan. Once he asks for more, even the slightest, Ma Kuxuan, you must pay a price that is strictly reciprocal and exact. Step into the divine way, return to the position of God and become a god. And this trend is irreversible. Therefore, going a step further, stealing a little bit more secrets, Ma Kuxuan will completely abandon the emotions and desires, and will no longer be bound by cause and effect, even if he preserves the memory of this life. So this is a paradox. If you want to use more divine ways to help yourself with supernatural powers and kill an immortal with a crushing posture, Ma Kuxuan will no longer be Ma Kuxuan. Since this road has come to an end for the time being, Ma Kuxuan is on another road. He also prepared several gifts for Qin Pingan as a way of hospitality. At the bottom of the collapse, amidst the flying snow, there were golden thunderbolts wandering wantonly. When the manpower was finally exhausted, the mighty fist of the master in the bright red robe showed no sign of weakening. Is it possible that Qin Pingon can really eat all the troubles in one go? Ma Kuxuan asked curiously. Xijing warriors, are they all so powerful? As for the joints of practice, Ma Kuxuan is an expert with a very high vision, but he has never been involved in martial arts, so he knows very little. Zhou Mi replied, because he is at the Qixing level, there is no one before, and he is uniquely blessed, so he can carry it for a longer time. Ma Kuxuan twitched the corners of his mouth. It's a good thing to endure if you can. Careful and non-committal. Ma Kuxuan laughed loudly and slapped his knees. I'm going to get out of trouble later. This guy will definitely complain to me. Your tricks are too low. Is that right? Zhou Mi reminded. It's too early to be happy in the battle. After all, this wilderness Wenhai who was invited by Ma Kuxuan's supporter was Ma Kuxuan, who visualized with ancient secret methods and then passed the melting furnace. The existence that emerges is equivalent to using the natal supernatural powers of two of the ancient 12 high-ranking gods at the same time. Far beyond what ordinary puppets can match. It was named by Ma Kuxuan as soul calling, which is a secret, which is not bad. Zhou Mi smiled and said, people take a sigh of relief and gods receive a stick of incense. It really fits the occasion. On the ground, Qin Ping's boxing is so simple that there are almost no moves to speak of, and he is out of the box. The heyday of the boxing intent is even more vast and unparalleled, like a who is not incensed breaks the shackles and walks the world. Ma Kuxuan's face was brilliantly illuminated by the golden light and the color of snow, and he kept his eyes fixed on the battlefield where he seemed to be invincible before a warrior, only against the sky. There are thousands of spells on the mountain which dazzles the eyes. Looks good, but in Ma Kuxuan's eyes, it seems that it is not as good as relying on two fists. It's a pity that when he got close to Yu Shiwu he had some intentions at first, but after all he couldn't bear to take action against this friend, so he came out to occupy the magpie's nest and used the dead body to revive his soul. Ma Kuxuan couldn't help sighing, what a monster. Zhou Mi said, it's not like a monk in the Ascension realm, there are very few martial arts fighters who can reach the first level of gods in the same era, and the chances of matching each other are even fewer. Ma Kuxuan said, put yourself in the same place. Even if the combat power on paper is equivalent, facing this thunder pool, I can't go to him so casually. Zhou Mi said, it's calm. The existence of heavenly tribulation, apart from being a pass that cultivators regard as dangerous, is an inescapable fate. The horror of the danger is only known to those monks in history who had to leave the world because they couldn't escape the catastrophe. In addition, there is a deeper truth. The existence of the heavenly tribulation can reduce merit and cut off the cause and effect of the world. If you are not good at studying the Tao and you end up in a field where you die and the Tao disappears, it is nothing more than returning the property to the owner. But if you succeed in crossing the catastrophe, it will be the benefit of the Tao which can help those who have escaped the catastrophe. Die the world of mortals. Otherwise, why get Daoists who teach the secrets of heaven, are all earnest and pay attention to a person who needs to wait for the completion of merits and virtues before going to prove the Tao and responding to the catastrophe, and then have the chance to become a flying immortal. But if it is said that the heavenly tribulation is man-made, then there is a world of difference. If you are not careful, you will be struck by the 5 thunders of the heavenly tribulation, cut off the 3 flowers on the top of the head, and destroy the 5 chi of the body that have been condensed with great difficulty. What Ma Kuxuan wants to do is to let the young hermit official who has done a lot of feats and the owner of the Lost Mountain have all his merits and virtues cut off, and lose some kind of protection of God's will in the dark. This move can reverse the situation and make Qin Ping temporarily lose his time. It doesn't matter whether you rely on flying swords or other methods. Here you will be the main opponent and I will follow the example and you will be the main opponent. In addition, Ma Kuxuan is more magical. Ma Kuxuan looked at that guy intently and muttered to himself, cut all your merits, don't ask for eternity, just a short time. When a person's merits and virtues are exhausted, he becomes a bad luck ghost. There is an old saying that people with strong luck bully ghosts and ghosts with bad luck trick people. This is the truth. Why are the gods of mountains and rivers in the world willing to pay homage to someone passing through? Or show up to send you off or secretly shelter? Why does the town god's temple in the world only have a booklet with the name recorded in Zhu pen? Everything is due to the ancient times. The saints of rites have undergone some reforms, among which there is a new rule of heaven, qi refiners and mountain gods, those who have merit for the people add land and advance the law. Merit and virtue in the world are divided into yin and yang, but what is yin and virtue? It is like tinnitus, which is only heard by oneself and people are ignorant. There are often admonitions that it is better to cultivate evil virtues than gain wealth and fame. A single word reveals the secret again, and the heart is Futian. The fields are barren and the water source is exhausted, so there is no talk of harvest in the coming year. This is not an empty talk of deceiving people to be good. It is only talking about a certain Dharma lineage of Taoism, which is extremely strict in accepting disciples and preaching. Why do they require disciples to have 3,000 merits and 800 good deeds? People have the heart of the Tao, the ambition to become a fairy, and the wish to soar to the sky, but right and wrong cannot be understood by themselves. Ordinary people meet noble people in the market and never miss them on the road of life. Then this fate of getting a mobile phone is not only human power, but also the fate hidden deep in it. In his own fields, gold and silver were picked up. If you can make it big and wide and turn your own field into the whole world, you are practicing Taoism. Zhou Mi said suddenly. Qin Pingan's merits and virtues are really too little, far below expectations, so low that there is no reason at all. I guess he encountered something and took the initiative to let go first. Ma Kuxuan was indifferent and smiled. He said, "It doesn't matter, the amount of merit and virtue on his body will not affect the overall situation after all. I just want a clear and refreshing result. This method of cutting 3 flowers but 5 qi with one hand will not retreat if you have too much, but make up for it if you don't have enough. On him make a hole in fortune-telling and see what he can fill in the gap." Ma Kuxuan stood up. "It's fine." The water surface of a thunder pool as vast as a huge lake hanging high in the sky has been reduced to a thin layer, and at most it can support several cycles of 5-element sky thunder. Zhou Mi nodded. "Please issue the decree." Ma Kuxuan didn't dare to be careless and said a few words from his heart. This Wenhai Zhou Mi obeyed the order and displayed the supernatural power of Zhou Mi's real body, which had never had the opportunity to shake hands on the human battlefield. Without giving Qin Pingan a chance to catch his breath, an untraceable supernatural power attached to Qin Pingan's body. At that moment Qin Pingan's body sank and there was a huge hole in the depression on the ground, densely covered with cobwebs. For a pure warrior, there is no need to take a breath unless the limit reaches one level. This is why it is also the limit, and each level of difference is still the root of the difference between cloud and mud. Cause and effect itself has nothing to do with good or evil, but cause and effect will bring about different pros and cons. Then a person's fortune, merit and fortune will fight and intertwine. Offset and finally set at a certain level, it is like becoming the current face of a person seen by a fortune teller. Qin Pingan, who had been throwing punches idly and walking calmly, frowned, and instantly shook his arms and shoulders, as if he wanted to shake off the foreign objects attached to his body. With just such a movement, gusts of wind are rolled over the ground like thunder, causing a large pit to expand more than several times, with a radius of tens of miles, almost flattened. As for the thunderstorms, they were scattered by Qin Pingan without any pain. Qin Pingan shook his sleeves, looked up at Ma Kuxuan who had walked to the cliffside. Ma Kuxuan's laughter came from beside his ears. "Accept it." Ma Kuxuan smiled and said, "I heard that Qin Shanju likes to be a good person by reasoning the most in his life. So let you know the truth firmly, what is called a good person also needs to pay a price." Qin Pingan nodded and smiled. "I like to hear this sentence. It turns out that you are not bragging and you are indeed a confidant." Ma Kuxuan pointed to Qin Pingan's shoulder. "Everyone is a ghost on the back of a person and there are ghosts on his back. I just manifested it. You have enough merits before, so of course you didn't notice it. This is weird. In the marketplace, there is often a saying that people who lack yang energy have chills in their necks and backs, and they always feel that there is something behind them. I don't know if it's a human or a ghost, right? Those people who have crossed the rivers and lakes and have blood on their hands are innumerable. At present their bones are strong and their evil spirits are heavy, but it is nothing. Wait until they are old and weak and their spirits are lacking, and then we will see what they are like. Had those who walk the rivers and lakes, why do you keep saying that it is not a disaster? And family members, they want to come to wash their hands in a golden basin. Why are officials most afraid of being implicated in ransacking their homes? Those who died directly by your hands, those who died indirectly because of you, those who stopped at the Shujian Lake during their travels, and those who are resident in this great wall of sword qi, no matter whether they are damned in vain, ghosts, etc. The demon gods. Anyway, now it's on your back. Qin Pingan's knees were indeed bent slightly, and his figure was hunched, showing an overwhelmed posture which was by no means a fake. Ma Kuxuan asked with a smile, "Have you ever seen the pain of carrying a husband through the mountains with your own eyes? It's the kind of coolie who carries a suitcase and snakes along the mountains with the road. I think you are similar to them now." Qin Pingan asked indifferently, "Then have you ever seen a woman carrying her husband?" Ma Kuxuan was taken aback. Qin Pingan said, "I have seen it. Do you know how they use bamboo shoots?" Ma Kuxuan was speechless and sighed, "Let me bite the bullet and hold my heart. It's rare to say something human." Qin Pingan, "You shouldn't take the suffering of others in this world so seriously." Zhou Mi reminded, "Don't delay." Ma Kuxuan nodded, "Then go ahead and make up the 3 axes." Qin Pingan, who was wearing a bright red robe, stretched out a palm, obviously signaling to Ma Kuxuan not to be polite. "Just let the horse come over." Zhou Mi's expression suddenly changed slightly. Ma Kuxuan asked suspiciously, "Can't shape it?" "There are monks in the 14th realm who are unpredictable and prophetic, and helped Qin Pingan set up some kind of amulet early?" Zhou Mi shook his head and said, "Be more weird. First use manpower to create a catastrophe, and then use secret methods to show cause and effect. What, is it necessary to imitate the inner demons of people who practice Taoism?" Qin Ping sneered and said, "If that's the case as I expected, then your 3 swords are really extraordinary. Ordinary immortals may not be able to withstand it." Ma Kuxuan hadn't even made a move yet, and the immortal who fought against him would probably be either dead or injured. The sky that was originally dark and oppressive opened up a line, and a hole was broken. With a flash of golden light, there was a bright sword light falling straight down. "The point of the sword point is not elsewhere." It was Qin Pingan. "Do not cut other things but cut yourself." The bright red robe on his body had already fallen off by itself, and he was 1 step ahead and swept away to another place. A man with a green shirt and a sword on his back walked out of the Moss Ancestral Hall and came to this world. "We finally meet." Standing in place, spreading his hands, the bright red robe was put on by itself. Qin Pingan smiled and said, "It's not easy, but I was able to force my real body to meet here." Sword of Coming Chapter 1094. After the rain in the mountains, the air is still cool, the days are long and there is nothing to do, and Yen sits leisurely. 1 big and 1 small at the table at the foot of the mountain, all with their legs crossed, eating sunflower seeds and chatting about what they have. They just pass the time leisurely. The 2 of them are a pair of good brothers who are famous for their lofty aspirations. There is no need to practice the Tao, no need to practice boxing. Why? Both of us are first-class geniuses. Genius aside, people who can climb mountains and practice Taoism with equal physical strength must avoid certain potholes on the way of practice, such as talisman, which means that the threshold is high and they need to have a master to guide them. Otherwise, if they are not careful, they will die, will waste a lifetime. Talk about longevity, talk about he-facing. This makes women afraid of marrying the wrong man and afraid of entering the wrong profession. Extremely true. What Brother Dafeng said is extremely true. What he said is extremely true. Some pits are shallower and you can climb out after suffering a bad opportunity. But some pits are very deep and you can't climb out after jumping in. The most fearful thing is to encounter a bottomless pit with no bottom. Brother Dafeng is one of the few martial arts masters in Aquarius continent. Learning martial arts and practicing boxing, this profession has a low threshold, so it's not a trap, right? This is not called a pit. Zheng Dafeng nodded and said, "It's a cliff." Qin Lingjun rolled his eyes and didn't say anything. It would be really ignorant of his conscience if he echoed a few words. Zheng Dafeng laughed and said, "Of course, the number of people learning martial arts outside the mountains is far greater than the number of Taoists in the mountains, but you can't think that learning martial arts is not a pit just because of this. You can't see Qin Pingan and Chao Xiai at a young age with a high realm flying in the sky. I feel that this profession is so messy." At this time, on the mountain road not far away, an old fairy with a 3-strand long beard and elegant Taoist clothes came. It was Lu Yong, the owner of the Qinghu Palace in Tongyi's Hao. The old man held the fly whisk in his hand, and walked the square steps steadily, looking very dignified. In the words of my old cook, the mountain is not a land fairy, and the gongmen is not a county magistrate, so I can't get out of this kind of momentum. Qin Lingjun took a closer look, got up hastily, shook his sleeves and strode forward. Oh hey, isn't this Brother Lu a rare visitor? The old real man stopped and beat him and said with a smile, come here uninvited, bother. Immediately Lu Yong added, Poverty Taoist saw Jingqing Taoist friend and Jing Zongshi from a distance, such a talkative talker with a youthful spirit, and a swallow sitting like a white jade. Now that Jing Dafeng is not a gatekeeper, he didn't get up to entertain guests. Hearing Lu Yong's comment, he was amazed. Qin Lingjun imitated the old master of the mountain and sighed, just say some polite words, who do you look down on? Brother Lu came to Luopa Mountain and he still needs to say hello to someone? These words are shabby and unreasonable. It seems that we are here snobbish, no nostalgia at all? It doesn't matter if you slap me in the face, whoever we brothers are with whom, the big deal is that we'll get rid of it after drinking 2 cups at the wine table. Slapping my master's face is not okay, absolutely not. Lu Yong laughed loudly, changed his way to Menjishu to hold his fists for Jianghu, and shook his fists vigorously. It's true that my brother is hypocritical. When I turn around to the table, I will punish myself with 3 bowls first. Qin Lingjun asked from the bottom of his heart. Brother Lu is a very busy person now. What is it? I can't explain clearly in the letter. I have to climb the mountain in person? Could it be that I have encountered some difficulties? Can I tell my brother in private? If you can help, I will definitely help. Not to help is the grandson. Lu Yong hesitated for a moment, but chose to say straightforwardly, fellow Daoist Jingqing, to tell the truth, I have a direct disciple called Zhao Zhu. I'm not boasting. This Zhao Zhu's talent for cultivating Taoism is not bad and his character is even better. That's right, I was wondering if I could help this apprentice get a seat in the backmost seat in your Jisa Peak Patriarch Hall, and be a guest official who can attend the discussions. In this way, I will remove it later with the burden on his shoulders and planning to retire. It will be more justified for Zhao Zhu to inherit the position of palace master. For such a big matter, it was just a letter sent by Fei Jian, which really seemed not sincere enough, as if Qinghu Palace was giving orders to Luopa Mountain. Lu Yong didn't think he had such a big face, so he had to go this trip in person, meet Qin Shanzhu and discuss this matter carefully. Be sure there are some. Qin Lingjun rubbed his chin, thought for a moment and said with a serious expression, Zhao Zhu, remember I met him, he is a good person. If it's just a general named guest, it's not difficult at all, but it means that there is a position in our Patriarch Hall. Yes, this is not a trivial matter. I can't help the master of the mountain and agree to it indiscriminately, but I can guarantee 2 things. One is to wait for the master of the mountain to return to the mountain. Say good things to that child and help him out. Besides, the master of the mountain thinks that this matter is feasible, and if he really wants to include it in the Jisei Peaks discussion process, and discuss whether it can be discussed in the Patriarch Hall, I will definitely be the first to support it and there will be no second words. Lu Yong thanked him sincerely and asked in a low voice, Shanzhu Qin is not in the mountain now? Qin Lingjun hummed, going down the mountain, my master is always so busy. The little boy in Tsingyi let out a sigh, that's why we can be so idle. Don't make mistakes when you're busy and don't make mistakes when you're free. You need real skills. The old man smiled and said, the atmosphere in the mountains is so good, Daoist Jingqing has contributed a lot. Qin Lingjun silently memorized this truth, it must be a golden word so that he can talk to a stupid girl who only teaches him how to do nothing. Lu Yong, who was planning to live here for a while, met Jing Dafeng, chatted a few words, they were like-minded and one of them praised Lu Yong, his elder brother is very immortal, which is rare, and he is even more human, precious and precious. One said that Brother Jing had worked hard and made great achievements, and that he regarded fame and fame like dung, and had fewer desires than people who practice Taoism. The 2 sides talked more and more, hit it off, so they made an appointment for wine, and Mr. Lu took a pen to sign in with the Taoist priest. Qin Lingjun led the old man up the mountain to stay in an elegant and quiet mansion. The relationship between Luopa Mountain and Qinghu Palace is somewhat similar. The family relationship between the 2 villages under the mountain is stronger than ordinary allies. Before Qin Lingjun went down the mountain, he saw another new face. Jing Dafeng clicked his tongue in amazement. What a good day today, the guests are here together. On the mountain road, there was a woman with a graceful figure coming slowly. She was like a fairy sister with hazy feathers. After scrutinizing her carefully, she found that there was a mole on the tip of her nose. Not only was it not a pity of a beautiful jade, but it had a sense of beauty that made the finishing point. Zheng Dafeng hastily straightened his clothes, planning to meet the unidentified woman in person for a while. The former janitor, isn't he still the janitor? We are not happy to cross the river and tear down the bridge in Luoba Mountain. After meeting with the woman, she directly gave a certificate. Zheng Dafeng took over, and after confirming that it was not a forgery, he was quite surprised. It was actually a customs clearance certificate issued directly by the Confucian Temple of China. I heard from the gossip that over the years, the Confucian Temple has only taken out a total of more than 100 copies. Generally speaking, most of the Qi practitioners who have won this honor are local monks in the wilderness, and spies who have been placed in the wilderness by Xianxia and have not returned to their hometown for a long time. Jing Qingjia is written on the pass and the Taoist name is Yunhu, but did not specify the origin and sect. The female cultivator smiled and said, I dare not hide it. I am actually from the wild world. In the past, the dojo was located in Jinsui City. Now I can be regarded as a monk who has not yet been included in the genealogy of Baidi City. Zheng Dafeng suddenly realized and said that this Taoist name was familiar, and it turned out to be the city lord of Jinsui City, a genuine fairyland city lord. Now the surname is Zheng, which is reasonable. Qing Jia said in an extremely mellow Dali official dialect. This trip to Aquarius Island is only for two things. One is to follow Mr. Zheng's decree, find Gu Kan, and help him establish a sect with all his strength. The other is to meet a certain senior from my hometown, trace back to the origin. This senior can be regarded as the originator of our Jinsui City. Jinsui City can have today's situation, Zheng Qingjia can have today's realm. It is thanks to him. Recognizing the ancestors and returning to the clan is the meaning of the title. Now that Jinsui City belongs to the vassal sect of Baidi City, and the matter of returning to the clan has been settled, then it is even more necessary for me to come here and recognize my ancestors. Zheng Dafeng knew this well. It is true that Xiaoma left 6 Dao veins in the wild world, but once everyone gathered together to chat according to Xiaoma, it seems that there is only one line of incense left over there, which is not a climate, cats and dogs, 3 or 2 at any time the incense may be broken. It stands to reason that the remaining stick of incense that Xiaoma had in those years should not be Jinsui City. Wilderness Jinsui City is such a famous sect that even Qi practitioners from Xianxia have heard of it. For example, Zheng Dafeng knows this sect. It is famous for having many female cultivators. The nun in the robe is even better. For 10 days and half a month they changed one piece every day and they didn't bring any duplicates. Although in the end they all came to the same goal and they had to take off their clothes. Just thinking about it can make bachelors laugh. Zheng Dafeng wiped his mouth and explained with a smile. Xiaoma is not on the mountain and has gone on a long trip. But I will be back soon. I believe fellow Daoist Qingjia will not wait long. Qingjia smiled and said, I haven't had time to ask the name of my fellow Taoist. Zheng Dafeng said, it's a coincidence that we both have the surname Zheng. We were a family 500 years ago. How old is my sister? Since we both have the surname Zheng, it's not appropriate to call me Xiao Zheng. You can just call me Xiao Feng. Zheng Dafeng invited, I invite fellow Daoist Yunhu to go to the humble house to talk about it. The place is simple. The customs of the barbaric world are not polite, not to mention that Qingjiao is still the lord of a city, who has been mediating for many years between Yangji and Feifei, who are also the throne demon, and now he is following Jing Juzhong. Qingjia didn't feel the need to argue with the man in front of her, so she directly interrupted the greasy words of this scruffy man and said with a smile, I won't disturb Jing Daoyu's residence, but I would like to ask, can I go for a walk on the mountain? I only took a rough look at the scenery on the mountain road and I have really admired the dojo of Lord Yingguan for a long time. Zheng Dafeng immediately changed his words, patted his chest and said, it's easy to say the size of this mountain, the distance and the road I can walk down with my eyes closed and I will take you up the mountain. Xianwei was speechless. Qing Jiao probably never imagined that before he entered the mountain he would meet such a person at the foot of the mountain. The desolate mountain in her impression is not like this. After all, it was a dojo built by the young Yingguan himself, so it should be a well-guarded and orderly hilltop. Because he didn't know who the man surnamed Zheng was in Luopa Mountain, what background he had and what relationship he had with Qin Yingguan, Qing Jia had no choice but to follow him up the stairs and climb the mountain slowly. Fortunately, this trip was not in vain. When Qing Jia got her wish, she actually set foot on Mount Luoba, which to a large extent dilutes the discomfort caused by the man around her. Just now, after recording the names at the Taoist priest's side, Xianxia stopped to take a deep breath, looked up at the plaque and saluted before officially moving up the mountain to pass the gate archway. If it weren't for the monks of the wild monster race, they would definitely not be able to truly understand the complicated and heavy thoughts of Xianxia and the others. Because he had never really been an enemy of the Great Wall of Sword Qi and the last hidden official. Qin Lingjun sent elder brother Lu to his residence, and on the way back to the foot of the mountain he saw Jing Dafeng hooking up with an unfamiliar girl there, and felt sad for a while. Brother Dafeng, he has been single for many years, it's hard. Qin Lingjun slipped to Xianwei's side first and asked in a low voice, "Who is it?" Taoist Xianwei replied with a heartfelt voice, "It's a fellow Taoist from a foreign land. His surname is Jing, his name is Qingjia, and his Taoist name is Yuanhu. He seems to be looking for Guqin." After all, unlike Jing Dafeng, Xianwei is on the genealogy, so he can't see much inside story. Nor was he ever curious about the visitor's background. Qin Lingjun nodded, thinking he understood. "I presume that this woman is Shan Xiaxiu, who has nowhere to seek refuge, and I can't find the gate of the temple in Baidi City in Zhongtu with a pig's head, because I have heard about the relationship between my master and the little slug. Because of the relationship, I just want to ask my master to help you relax, say something nice to Guqin and recommend him." The little boy in Xingyi sighed softly. It was not easy. Climbing the mountain together, listening to Jing Dafeng's ramblings, showing courteousness in different ways and getting close. Qin Lingjun, who was walking behind, clenched his hands into fists, pressed his cheeks hard and suppressed his laughter. Passing by a house that was not closed, there was an old man in the yard, lying on a rattan chair, closing his eyes and recuperating, breathing deeply as if he had fallen into a light sleep, holding a yellowed cattail leaf fan on his abdomen. When passing by the open courtyard gate out of the corner of her eye, Qingjia saw a scene. A flower that seemed to be persuaded by the spring breeze to travel far away, left the branch, swayed and fell on the old man's forehead. She took a few more glances. The old man was similar to the one with the surname Jing. He seemed to be a martial artist and his level was definitely not low. The state of Qingjia is high enough, and it can be seen that the old man who is in a trance like a monk is not pretending to be asleep, but has really settled his heart and wandered away. It is really rare for a martial artist to be like this, but to Qingjia, it is not a big surprise. After all, what she has seen and heard are all the affairs of high-ranking people in the wild world. The man surnamed Jing next to him, even if he was 20 years younger, I believe his appearance would not be much better. But the old man in the courtyard, if his age is doubled and based on his bearing he might be a beautiful man? Did Jing Dafeng rub his hands by accident or on purpose? The old cook really has a hand. Let Zhang Taigong catch the bait? This trick can be learned. Looking at Jing Dafeng, who was eager to try, Qin Lingjun felt that he had to be a firm and steadfast friend, and said with his heart, "Brother Dafeng, listen to my advice, don't learn this craft, trust me once, the result will only be good." It was just the opposite. No matter how ugly the old cook looks, when he shut up and didn't speak he still looked like a dog. If the fallen flower hit you on the head in the eyes of a woman it would feel like, "You can say no?" Jing Dafeng laughed and said, "Tell me about it. Listen carefully." Qin Lingjun lowered his voice and said, "Down into the latrine." Jing Dafeng pressed the head of the little boy in Xingyi. "I can use metaphors and am good at talking." Qin Lingjun sighed and complained to himself, "It really is a bad word." Jing Dafeng lost interest all of a sudden, so he found an excuse and asked Qin Lingjun to lead the way for him. The man's expression was gloomy, the curtain fell from his back and he went down the mountain alone. Zhou Xian is often like this now, and he regards sleeping as a practice and everyone is no longer surprised. According to the information leaked by Xiaomi Meili, it seems that the old cook has made an appointment with the good man Mountain Master, and the place is in the capital city of Nanyuan Kingdom, which is in his own blessed land. This winter they will fight whenever it snows. Jing Dafeng walked out of the bluestone slab path, a path of the main spirit of Jilin Peak. He could go up or down, hesitated a bit. Jing Dafeng walked to the top of the mountain. Turning his head and looking at the foot of the mountain, behind a pillar in the archway of the mountain gate, there will be a bamboo chair sitting on a fake Taoist priest who can't even grant a private letter. In fact, his name is Nianjing and Xianwei is just his name, and he gave himself a Taoist name Xushuan for walking in the rivers and lakes. He was abducted by the mountain master from the Dali capital, so the mountain master on the Luapa mountainside is used to calling him the Taoist priest. Only when Qin Lingjun got to know him well would he intentionally turn Xuanxu upside down and jokingly call him Daoist Xuanxu, just to make fun of Zhuangzi's Xuanxu. Xianxia's realm is not high and his face is not thin. He has wandered around the world for many years and he is ashamed of this? On the contrary, I like the statement of fellow Daoist Jing Qing. Taoist Xianxia is Tianqing's gatekeeper every day, hiding a book in each sleeve. When no one is around he reads the serious one and when there are people around he reads the more serious one. It's raining. What else can I do? Hide from the rain in the house. At most I just put up an umbrella, pretended to be and sat at the gate of the mountain as cold as a quail. After sitting for a long time I went back to the house to read a book. Roughly estimated, it has been raining for 9 days in a row? Xianxia about 5 days. In the Western Buddhist kingdom it may be 4 days. In the wild world 1.5 days. Colorful world half a day. Zheng Dafeng originally thought that Xianxia would inexplicably break through several realms during the raining process of the world. It is not uncommon to break through, but it is strange not to break through. But things are just so weird. I never thought that the realm of Xianxia's body was so stable, that it was unreasonable and he could be said to be unshakable. Now that the rain has stopped, the Taoist priests were in the second realm when they came to Luopa Mountain, and they are still in the second realm now. After all, practice is his own business. Zheng Dafeng is not good at reminding anything, and it is not appropriate to talk too much. There is often a saying at the foot of the mountain that tells the truth, but there is a taboo of, "It's a pity to tell the truth," on the mountain. Zheng Dafeng hugged the back of his head with his hands, and went up the mountain with his shoulders dangling. Hey, since there is no graceful figure of mists and on the mountain road, she must be practicing boxing on the white jade square on the top of the mountain. The woman punches, tosses and turns, ups and downs. Can it be unsightly? Walking up the steps slowly, Zheng Dafeng tidied up his clothes, spit in the palm of his hand and stroked his temple hair. In the past my master didn't like to chat with me. Senior brotherly heir didn't know whether he was passing on the imperial decree, or because he saw that his junior brother was more handsome than him, so he deliberately used words to disgust me, saying that the reason why Zheng Dafeng couldn't learn martial arts was that he couldn't do well in praying for gods. Being dishonest, failing to succeed at a high level and not achieving at a low level, you end up in a situation where you can't rely on both ends. You can't learn anything and you can't master martial arts. A person who wants and pursues what? Over the years in Feishing City under the colorful world, Zheng Dafeng repeatedly chewed these heavy words, knowing the truth, otherwise he would not have thought of going to Dadu and building a temple as a god. But deep down Zheng Dafeng is still lazy. It's not much better than that Zhou Xian who thinks about lunch and dinner after breakfast every day, and thinks about getting supper after dinner every day. Ordinary people do what they want, and when they go out, others will flirt, and after returning home wives and concubines are in groups, golden mountains and silver mountains. What the Taoist seeks is for those who are lower to climb through the realms, to be the gods on land who can prolong their lives, and for those who are higher to live forever and soar in the sky, hoping to live the same life as the heaven and the earth. Zheng Dafeng took all these very lightly. Just treat it as a dog that can't change eating shit. Zheng Dafeng climbed to the top of Jilin Peak first and didn't see Tsinyuanji, so he planned to go to the back mountain again. The little girl named Chao Yang seemed to feel ashamed every time she saw her, so she might be a little bit mean to her. The girl has good eyesight. I don't know if it's because she covets her appearance, or because she sees her superb martial arts skills. Both. Alas, I have to live up to their infatuation again. Zheng Dafeng walked around the original mountain temple on the top of the mountain, leaned on the railing and looked at the mountains stretching all the way to the north. His eyes were full of blue, especially after the rain. I don't know if the girl from the Su shop will be able to learn the truth when she comes to the unfamiliar Qingming Tianxia and learns boxing from her senior brother who has never masked her face. This is a well-deserved big shot. Even if he is said to be #1 in martial arts in several worlds, there is no objection. First, the last priest of the Great Wall of Sword Qi Yengua. After that came Lizhu Cave's shaman Xie. Now he is the #1 martial artist in Qingming Tianxia Yashanlin Jiangxian. Zheng Dafeng has been in Feishing City for many years, and he is very familiar with the customs there. In addition, he and Miss Yanxin often eye to eye, and their relationship is getting better, and the anecdotes about the Great Wall of Sword Qi are even more precious. Compared with the famous Summer Palace, the Cold Palace is not enough. It is similar to the former's vassal, and the two have the meaning of the Empress of the Palace and the concubine of the Cold Palace. The outside world will directly associate the summer resort with the hermit official. Whenever one of the titles is mentioned, the other will naturally come to mind. However, in the hands of the two hermit officials Xiao Sun and Qin Pingon, they have indeed pushed the summer resort to a very high level. The location of the place has made Qi practitioners from Manhuang and Haoran Two Worlds remember this place name deeply. Now the cold shelter in Feishing City has been transferred to the lineage of the criminal officials who are responsible for the affairs of the abbot Qi Shou and Yan Exin, and has become the office of the criminal officer Jianxiu and the martial arts arena for martial arts. But in fact, the hiding palace was the exclusive domain of the priests a long time ago. It's just the file of the Great Wall of Sword Qi deliberately avoiding talking about it. One for summer and one for cold. Shelter from the cold? Why hide from the cold? Why hide? Could it be that the two palaces of the Great Wall of Sword Qi have their own origins with the gods of fire and water from the 5th to high school in the ancient heavenly court? Qin Pingon once asked the boss sword fairy this series of questions, but the boss sword fairy asked him to ask the priest, saying that the priest was in charge of this, and he knew better about these old calendars who were too rough to wipe their ass. Qin Pingon had no choice but to ask the sacrificial officer, apart from the name on the secret document, what was his life experience, why the record was erased, and where is this person now? The boss sword fairy said that you can ask the former hermit official. I remember that the chauffeur Braid and the priest seem to have a good relationship, and the relationship is not bad. Qin Ping angrily gritted his teeth and said that you asked me to ask Xiao Sun, who is already in the 14th realm, whether you can run away after asking or die after asking. The boss sword fairy patted the shoulder of the new hermit official and sighed, so it can't just be taller than Xiao Yu. It doesn't matter, wait until your realm is equal to her, then you can ask, and you can run away after asking. If you want to talk a little more, just talk a little more. It was in the hands of Cui Chan that Lizhu Cave set up the ghosts. Qin Pingon already knew that the current dealer was still Lin Jingqing. As for the former dealer, there was no record and he was doing nothing. It seemed that his senior brother Cui Chen was not satisfied with his actions, so he was replaced by Lin Jingqing, who was working in the kiln supervision and construction department. That is the foreigner with the pseudonym Xiaxinan. This person is the disciple of Old Man Yang in name, and his status is comparable to that of Li Er and Jing Dafeng later. And Xiaxinan, as the last sacrificial officer of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, left his hometown quietly. The Hanging Mountain is the only way to go. After that, he ran into Zhang Tiaoxiao, the #1 martial artist in the past at sea, and had a fight. After that, they landed in Tongyi's Hao and found Qing Tong from Zanyala. According to the inside story that Qing Tong leaked to Xiaomao, the two parties broke up because of disagreements. Then they went to Aquarius Continent and secretly entered the Lizhu Cave. Old Man Yang from the pharmacy, all the disciples he taught were martial arts without exception. From Xiaxinan to Li Er, Jing Dafeng, and finally to Sudian and Xianxia. Of course, before Xiaxinan there must have been some senior brothers and sisters, but after all, the lifespan of a pure martial artist is no better than that of a Qi trainer, unless there is an exception like Xiaxinan. In the history of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, the last martial artist at the end was Bai Lianshuang, an old lady from the Ning Mansion. According to the archives of Yingguan's lineage going back up, the last martial artist at the end of the border has been hundreds of years, and he is still a female master. Even if you keep turning the page in the long history of the Sword Qi Great Wall, the number of martial arts masters who can reach the peak in the end is still pitifully small. The reason why it is so abnormal is naturally that the Great Wall of Sword Qi has long planned to build dikes to intercept the flow, accumulate a lot of money, and let someone monopolize the martial arts. This certain person is the last sacrificial official, whose surname is Yan and whose name is Gua. His real name is Yan Gua. Qin Pingon once saw a comment in Xiao Sun's handwriting on a secret record of a file. The body of every pure warrior is a pantheon of incense. Thousands of years ago, the first ancestor of the military family opened up the martial arts with one hand, which opened a new life for the world, but it is a pity that he reached the top but failed to ascend to the sky. If it is too close, it becomes a burden that cannot be lost. Unless he dissipates all his luck, he will have a chance. It's just that the battle of ascension to heaven was about to usher in, so he threatened to talk about it later. The big battle was imminent, and it would be good to have more killing power. As for what happened later, it was the separatist internal strife that almost caused chaos in the world again. He was beheaded and imprisoned in the sky for 10,000 years. At that time, Qin Pingon also asked the boss Zhenxian a crucial question: why Ningyao was injured so badly in the small town. Qin Qingda's answer at that time was rather perfunctory. He only said that someone had made a fortune-telling plan, and it was roughly that Ning girl should have this disaster, and the sooner the better. Bad things are not afraid of early but easy to clean up. Zheng Dafeng straightened up, focusing his gaze on a mountain top. Not far from the north of Luopa Mountain, there is a small mountain, and there is no master practicing Taoism there, so it is so deserted. I remember Weibo mentioned it once as if there were some construction projects on that mountain before, but they were just sloppy and put on airs, and then they were abandoned halfway. To the north is the Hon Kim Lake formed by the relocation of all the peaks of Longquan Jianzhong. This mountain and this water are a little lonely and they have been silent for a long time. Zheng Dafeng thought for a while. That solitary mountain seems to be called Jinrang Mountain. The matter of love between men and women is actually similar to cultivating Taoism. The mountain is not just me, I will go to the mountain. Probably wishful thinking of unrequited love is approaching, but can only look at the mountain from the foot of the mountain. Zheng Dafeng went to the back mountain, and then Qin Lingjun took Qingjia to the top of the mountain, planning to walk around here first and then take her to the Jisa Peak to have a look. Qingjia looked at the building on the top of the mountain and asked doubtfully, "Where is this place?" It turns out that there is no plaque hanging here, but there is a long couplet hanging on it. It doesn't look like a fairy mansion but more like a temple? Why was it hung here earlier? Why not withdraw now? Qin Lingjun explained with a smile. There used to be a mountain temple here and this is the old site. Later the master of the mountain changed the place and moved to Chiduan Mountain. The way we went up the mountain just now is actually a way of burning incense. My master likes it very much. This couplet is left. According to the local custom, it can be called yuzhua. Although it looks a bit weird and doesn't match, my master believes in this very much. It's not just a display. Qingjia was stunned, no wonder. She looked at the couplet again and silently wrote down the content. The world whispers, the sky hears thunder. Although the ancestors are far away, the sacrifices are Yicheng. Don't worry about who I was in the last life, I need to pay more attention to this life. My life is up to me and the eternity is on this day. The dark room is heartbroken and the eyes are like lightning. Although the descendants are stupid, poetry and books should be read. Who will be me in the next life? Don't ask, don't underestimate this body, seek blessings for yourself. 3 talents are here 6 feet away. Qin Lingjun didn't urge her to move. Our Luopa Mountain is full of knowledge. We are the ones who know and cherish the best of blessings. On the way to Luopa Mountain, no matter how Qingjia, who was in the fairyland, tried her best to see the mountain, after all she was looking at the mountain from outside the mountain, covered by clouds and fog, so she couldn't see it clearly. After passing the archway at the foot of the mountain and actually entering the mountain, I realized that there is indeed something hidden in the sky. In addition, Qingjia has a keen sense of consciousness which is different from ordinary Taoist. When he only talked about the heavy rain that never stopped before, Qingjia saw that it was even worse. There are many ways and she has obtained a copy of Dao Yun. So far she has not been able to truly refine it. Qingjia knew that this matter was not small, but it was a pity that she was allowed to use her supernatural powers, and she even chose one on the spot. Living in a place with clean mountains and rivers, trying to form an array to absorb rainwater, and want to gain more from this, but still can't get more gifts from heaven. Qingjia knew that this matter could not be taken by external forces, so she had to give up. Before she set off on her way, she did not remove the landscape formation, but left a sum of fairy money, and let it continue to operate without rest. The loss of earth treasures is not worth mentioning, and it is left to those who are destined to enter the mountain to get this good place. Qingjia came to this Luopa mountain. Although she was a little disappointed at the foot of the mountain, when she came up to the mountain she became more and more sure that this mountain hides a big formation which is very mysterious. Even if there is no one in the mountain, she still wants to sneak in. God is still difficult. Earlier, Qingjia could tell at a glance that the little boy in Tsing-yi with the Dao named Jingqing next to him was a water snake. Qin Lingjun took her to the Patriarch Hall of Jisa Peak. The two sides chatted while browsing. The scenery she saw along the way made her feel relaxed and happy. Miraculous, not artificially chiseled out. In addition, there are many pavilions on the mountain road for people to rest their feet and enjoy the scenery. Every few miles there is a pavilion with wings. It is only said that the Zanbi pavilion they are standing at the moment has a wide field of vision, like a mountain helping each other, sweeping away the peaks and clouds for people. You can see a mountain range in the distance following Qingjia's line of sight. Qin Lingjun introduced that it is called Chiduan Mountain. It is the place where my good buddy Wei Shinjun became enlightened. For a person of integrity who has mastered the supernatural powers of shrinking earth, Piyun Mountain is very close at hand. If Qingjia hadn't been hindered by her own background, she really wanted to go to Piyun Mountain for a while, hide her identity and participate in a famous event. Night Banquet. The road of incense, fire and divine way is indeed easier to achieve longevity than refining qi and cultivating truth. Qingjia couldn't help but let out a faint sigh. As a qi refiner cultivates the way to climb the mountain, no matter how firm your heart is as a rock in asking, you will inevitably have to sigh, lamenting the hard-won self-cultivation at present, and melancholy about the road ahead. Rugged. In the 13 realms under the Hadao, one mountain releases one mountain barrier, and the realms are gates, and there are thousands of mountains beyond the mountains. Different from the common wild monsters, Qingjia admired Houran Tianxia since he was a child. Of course, if Mr. Zheng hadn't come to Jinsui City, Qingjia would not have become a traitor, left the wild and took refuge in Baidi City. There is no limit to the sea of learning, but there is no limit to my body. Abilities are limited, but desires are endless. This skin-like skeleton of a person is not only a treasure raft for cultivating Taoism and becoming immortal, otherwise why would the monsters and spirits in the world have to work hard to refine a human form, but at the same time it is a copper wall and iron wall to break through the wall to prove the Tao. It's the end of the military solution on this spot, and obediently return all the Taoism to the world. In many unknown caves, there are many qi practitioners who have great perseverance, great opportunities and great luck, and now they are all dead bones. In any case, more than the best is more than the next. Look at the mundane world outside the mountains. How many people are young in the compilation of thousands of years, and the same poor people for 100 years? Isn't it even more sad? Qingjia's imagination was full of imagination, and her mind wandered thousands of miles. At the beginning of the melting of heaven and earth, the vitality is weakened. Reminiscing about the style of the ancients, it is impossible to seek. Hearing the sound of rustling footsteps in the distance, Qingjia immediately put away her scattered thoughts like weeds and settled down. She didn't want to show the slightest bit of cultivation here, so she didn't use the kind of spells similar to Buddhist celestial eyesight. She just turned her head and looked. See also, always uncertain about the true state of the Comer. Seeing that fellow Daoist Yun who didn't move for a while, Qin Lingjun simply sat cross-legged on the bench, resting his chin on his hands, taking a moment of pleasure in his busy schedule. To say that showing up to entertain male monks is a no-nonsense duty-bound task, but for women Qin Lingjun is not Jing Dafeng, let alone an old cook. It is really a bit of a chore. Thinking back in the past in Yujiang, although the house was full of friends and happy all day long, it was not the slightest ignorance of the world of people on the mountain welcoming and sending off either grievances or business. Not to mention those yuanying old gods who only hear their names but don't see their shapes. Even Jindan can afford to say that they can cover the sky with one hand. Only the brother of the Yujiang water god, Yukin, who is the host, is here. Before opening the mansion, it was because of some hidden encounters in the mountains in the early years, and the relationship with Shin Gaozong, that he and a certain reincarnated disciple of Qi Zhenjuan, the Taoist lord of the one continent and the blessed land in his hand, helped to give Yujiang bestowed a treasure talisman similar to an imperial order to open the mansion. And only then did the resplendent Qingjian water mansion later appear, with an arrogated shape just like a dragon palace. On land. There is no reason to think of a female qi refiner in the Qingjianshi mansion. She has never known her origin. She is not bad in appearance and not very beautiful. They are all private rhetoric from friends. Some say that she is the concubine or concubine of the water Yukan, and some say that she is a poor person who came here to seek refuge. Knowing that she lives in seclusion all year round, saves food and money, and is too stingy, she really has a determination to pursue the way even if she dies in this life, which is probably the so-called death in the Book of Shiguai. Unfortunately, her fate was not good. I don't know her very well, and maybe we haven't talked a few words together, so Qin Lingjun didn't feel sad about her ending, but just felt that there were some things that shouldn't be like this, but the result was like this, that's it. Qin Lingjun is not sentimental. On the mountain, only when he thinks of the old people on the other side of the Yujiang River, can he show some emotions that match his appearance. The accumulation is not high. There are many difficulties here. How can the word hard work describe them all? Qingjia was a little surprised when he heard the words and sincerely praised, "Fellow Daoist, great advice." Qin Lingjun waved his hands again and again and said with a laugh, "I don't mean to say that these literary words are all borrowed from Brother Dafeng." Qingjia was obviously skeptical. Qin Lingjun grinned and said, "As long as he meets a good-looking woman he will go crazy, and he is actually a very smart person. Qing Jia declined to comment on this. Before coming to Luopa Mountain to recognize ancestors, Qing Jia still did some solid homework. Leaving aside the fact that the mountain lord Qin Pingon was a hermit official, Howren Xianxia's Qi trainers know more about the inside story than she does in Wildland. It's a pity that there are too few landscape mansion newspapers about Luopa Mountain. When Qing Jia arrived at the boundary of Aquarius Island, she wanted to get some paper content at the ferry on the mountain or at the Xianxia Inn, but she never thought it would be impossible to find. Qi practitioners mentioned it occasionally and it was mostly gossip. Qing Jia knew it was the kind of nonsense and did not break the law when she heard it. It's just an inconspicuous little sect on the top of a small mountain. At most, it is regarded as a vassal of Piyun Mountain, helping Dali Wei Shanjun to launder some shady money into the clean silver of Beiyue treasury, so it is not worth reporting to the mansion on the mountain. It is not appropriate for the Immortal mansion to go to the bottom of how to spend pen and ink. After all, there are too many investigations. The chief official and the goddess showed it to Mr. Wei Shan. Wouldn't it be a waste of time to talk about it in vain? In this way it would be tantamount to having a bad relationship with a northern mountain. At that time Piyun Mountain will remember the grudge, reciprocate and send an invitation letter for a night banquet directly to the door, to go or not to go. If you don't go you will slap Wei Shanjun in the face. If you go, how should you prepare the gift? Who doesn't know that the foot of Beiyue Mountain is called, it is a must. How many sects of the Immortal family who came to congratulate with gifts have suffered a great loss here, just because they underestimated the extravagance of their peers and had to temporarily increase the amount of gifts. Let me have a better life, then I will pay for it myself first, put it on the mat and then report to the sect later, and raise the established congratulatory gift to another level, so as not to make the later ones feel better. When the young Yingguan quietly returned to his hometown from the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and then he led a team to ask about the sword at Jingyang Mountain, it happened to be at the stage when the Confucian Temple banned Howren Mansion newspapers. It was obvious that the Confucian Temple was instructed to suppress news on purpose. I don't want Luoba Mountain and Qin Pingon to be too famous. There is a tacit agreement between the Confucian Temple of China and the Great Li Dynasty. No wonder it is difficult to find a page the size of a tofu block in the Xianshui Mansion newspaper in Aquarius Island. Now in Aquarius Island, it is recognized that there are 3 odd and 2 weird in Luoba Mountain. One oddity is in a sect with the first word head. There are very few genealogical monks. The second oddity is in a sect on a mountain. There are many martial arts masters. The third oddity is in a righteous sect and there are many mountain ghosts. The strange thing is that the latecomers from Luopa Mountain were able to make Ruan Qiong, who was the first to establish the identity of the sect, the Longquan Sword sect, forced out of the old Liju cave world, and had to relocate to the north. You need to know Ruan Qiong, but the Dali dynasties, the chief priest never thought of making room for Luopa Mountain. Luopa Mountain is at its peak and unstoppable, so one can imagine it. Presumably it was because when Qin Jianxian was young and down in his hometown, what kind of conflict did he have with Ruan Qiong, who was the last saint in Liju Dongtian? Now that they meet again on the Dao or in the imperial palace of Dali City, does sect master Ruan need to give way to Qin Jianxian? There is also a strange thing, that is, the guardian of Luopa Mountain is enshrined. Now the outside world only knows that his surname is Zhou. It is only said that during her visit to Jingyang Mountain, she intentionally suppressed her realm to an extremely low cave level from beginning to end, and she is the only monk who has no eyes on the sword fairy of Jingyang Mountain. Not to mention Jingyang Mountain with sword repair like a cloud, it is not worth her shot at all, and it is not even worthy of her showing a little bit of Dao Qi. Don't look at her skinny appearance of a little girl in black. It must be that she has profound skills, rejuvenated, and her cultivation base is bottomless. Occasionally there are some objections, wondering if there is a possibility that the state enshrined in that week is actually the state that everyone saw. It was just that there was news soon, which proved the absurdity of this statement and completely dispelled doubts and disputes. And these few news spread from the main city of Jianqi Great Wall in the early years to the Mirage in the north, and then spread to the intercontinental ferries of the old Dragon City through the upside-down mountain, and finally arrived at Aquarius Island. Cultivator Izhou realized later that in this matter, Qin Jianxian was the last hermit official of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. It turned out that in the Great Wall of Sword Qi, Zhou enshrined was a famous and well-known figure who was often called by the local people. Jianxiu mentioned the big water monster known as the Dumb Lake. Where is the Great Wall of Sword Qi? The local sword cultivators over there with their eyes higher than the top, can't even look down on the whole Xianxia. How many foreigners can they look up to? What's more, the monsters who want to gain a firm foothold in the Great Wall of Sword Qi have a saying. If I remember correctly, isn't there only the number one great sword immortal like that old deaf child? It really was a great opportunity. Before Qin Jianxian made his fortune at that young age, he was able to invite such a fierce general from Luzhou, Beiju, to sit on the top of the mountain and protect the mountains and rivers. Qing Jia asked in a heartfelt voice, "Fellow Taoist Jing Qing, could this be the Zhou priest of your Lupo mountain?" Qin Lingjun stretched out his hand to say hello to Meili, and said with a heartfelt smile, "Yes, her name is Zhou Meili and she is patrolling the mountains. In our family she has the most official titles. For some things the two senior brothers of the Master of the Mountain, you have to listen to her. Our Zhou protector's official authority is very great." The speaker has no intention but the listener has intention. Qing Jia's heart skipped a beat. Two brothers? When Xing only has a few direct disciples in total, those senior brothers of the young hermit official, whoever picks out two at random Chan's was Lu Shirlu Qi Jingchan. Qing Jia had already concluded that this water monster, contrary to the rumors of the outside world, was actually a cave, and it was absolutely true. Now she didn't dare to make any judgments again. The little girl in black who was bouncing around saw Jing Qing's waving first, and then saw the strange woman in plain and elegant dress. He hurriedly held his breath and concentrated on walking seriously, and quickly came to the gazebo holding a green bamboo stick and a golden pole in his arms, saluting, "It's a pleasure to meet the immortal master." Generally speaking, being able to go up the mountain is not too much of an outsider. Qing Jia returned the gift and said, "Xing Qingjiao in Jintui City, I am honored to have met Zhou and Xin." The little girl in black nodded. She was not good at greeting strangers, so she immediately turned cold. Qing Jia took the lead and said with a smile, "I used to hear about Qin Shan's wine shop and the name of Dumb Lake Wine in the wilderness Jintui City." The little girl was timid and tentatively asked, "Really?" Qing Jia said with a smile, "There is absolutely no falsehood." Millet Bean suddenly beamed with joy. "Good reputation, huh? It's a household name, huh? The big water monster of Dumb Lake is not tall and has a good reputation. Famous all over the world, there is more than one 000. As for the realm, it's all a misunderstanding, hey, little misunderstanding, hey." Qing Jia is still wondering about the true Taoism of the little girl in front of her. Could it be that she is really the kind of real person who has achieved the Tao, who has returned to the basics and possessed the so-called heart of a child in Taoism? Originally, she was on a mountain tour, so she was happy to accompany Jing Qing and Yuanhu Immortal to take another trip to Jisei Peak. Qing Jia looked at the little girl who was leading the way ahead and shook her head. It is not worth being surprised that there are dragons and crouching tigers hidden in the desolate mountain, so I will not guess the cultivation level of this mountain guard. Qin Lingjun suddenly pointed to the cliff carving beside the road. "Fellow Yunhu Taoist, what do you think of these words?" Qing Jia glanced at it, nodded in appreciation and said, "It's a first-class cursive script with excellent skills. Like a strong man drawing a sword, his spirit is flying." Qin Lingjun had already prepared the manuscript and immediately followed up. It was carved by Jing Dafeng. "Even my master Shanju said that he is not weak in academic ability and he has boyish skills. Brother Dafeng, I can only help here. It is said that women cover all their ugliness with nothing, but poor men have nothing to do with their ugliness." Qing Jia held back a question that had been accumulated for a long time in her heart, and she couldn't figure it out. She had asked Mr. Jing before, but Mr. Jing seemed to know the answer, but he deliberately didn't say it, and asked her to ask the master when she arrived at Luoba Mountain. This doubt is why Qin Pingon chose Luopa Mountain as the dojo, the foundation of establishing a school. Luopa? Not a very good way to say it. People down the mountain pay attention to auspicious words, and people on the mountain will only taboo more. Regarding this matter, even the monks in their hometown in the wild world have speculated a lot, arguing, but there is no conclusion. Qing Jia hesitated and said, "I have a question. I don't know if it's appropriate to ask." She immediately laughed at herself, guessing that she really saw the young hermit official. No matter how curious she was, she dared not ask in person. Xiao Meili scratched her face and frowned at Jing Qing. "Jing Qing, you are the one to answer." Qin Lingjun has always been a big-hearted person. He laughed and said, "Fellow Daoist, just ask. I'm sure I'll know everything without talking about it. Outside the mountains, I might have to be a little more cautious. In the mountains on my own land with the backing of the mountain master, I am full of courage. Xianxia asked. The name of this mountain is Down and Out. Is there a hidden university question? As a result, Qin Lingjun was blinded as soon as he heard it. Fellow Daoist Yuan who asked tricky questions. He really never thought about such a question that is so close at hand. Coughing a few times, implying that Xiaomi Li, you have nothing to talk to the master of the mountain. Do you have a ready-made answer? Xiaomi Li and Qin Lingjun had a very good understanding and immediately turned their heads and smiled. Before I came to Luopa Mountain, I asked the owner of the Good Mountain, and he said that Luopa Mountain was an ancient name in the county annals of my hometown. I went to the mountain for inspection and saw that this place is more eye-catching, so I spent money to buy it, and the Good Mountain owner didn't think too much about it at that time. In fact, Qin Pingon told her more, involving some confidential inside stories that are not known to outsiders. Millet grains don't know how to pour beans in a bamboo tube, and they only say 3 sentences when they meet people, so they can't give up all their hearts. Xianxia nodded and stopped asking the bottom line. After thinking about it, she couldn't help asking again. 2 friends, this opportunity is rare. I have another question. I don't want to talk about it. Everyone knows that there are 3 souls and 7 souls in the human body. Hauran sages recorded in ancient books that the essence of human beings life the soul, and the body is called the soul. Taoism also said that the soul is the of the sun and the soul is the of the yin. But since ancient times, the secrets of spiritual books for refining qi and cultivating immortals, as well as the practice of our generation of monks, the way is that the Jindan realm allows the yin god to travel far away, and the nascent soul realm creates a yang god body and outer body. The former is virtual, like a soul traveling between heaven and earth, and the latter is real, which is more suitable for the body. There is an ambiguity with yang soul and yin soul. Dare to ask the 2 fellow Taoists, how do you explain the truth here? Is the ancient writing wrong, or have we gone astray in our cultivation? The little girl leading the way walked faster. The little boy in Xingyi didn't even fling his sleeves up, he had to call for help. First he called Brother Dafeng with his heart, saying that the opportunity has come. That fellow Daoist Yuan who asked a good question, you should rush over to help answer it. She, if you can't say it, I will look at you with admiration. Xing Dafeng didn't pay attention to him, so Qin Lingjun could only repeat Wei Bo's divine title Night Tour in his heart. And Wei Bo asked what was the matter? Qin Lingjun quickly explained the situation. Wei Bo gave a reward. Qin Lingjun had no choice but to continue to shout Xing Dafeng with his heart. If he didn't come to save the situation, the brothers would just do it in the future. Xing Dafeng, who was busy instructing the young girl Chao Yang on boxing techniques on the other side of the mountain, had no choice but to say goodbye, rose against the wind, and landed on the side of the mountain road in an instant, with an elegant figure, and when his feet touched the ground, the man trembled slightly, sleeves facing Xianxia's smiling face. Leaving aside his appearance and temperament, he is indeed somewhat of a master. Xing Dafeng gathered his voice together and complained with Qin Lingjun. It's not that you don't understand, I'm used to traveling the rivers and lakes to rely on my face for food, and metaphysics is not my specialty. Qin Lingjun rolled his eyes and said, stop talking nonsense and do business. Don't let outsiders think that we are uneducated in Luopa Mountain. Xing Dafeng felt helpless, so he had to ask Xianxia to repeat the question. After listening to it, he was relieved and surprised me. It turned out that it was a question asked by a schoolboy. His mother thought that Sister Yuan who was going to ask how to ascend to the sky in 1 step. But Xing Dafeng had to deliberately pretend to ponder for a while and then replied with a smile. Li Xing created characters, but he personally interpreted and defined them, but there are not many. If I remember correctly, there is a sentence, the prosperity of ghosts. It is necessary to know the earliest ancient seal characters of the 2 characters of soul. Qi refiners, known as Taoists in ancient times, what they do is to go upstream against the current, steal yin and yang, seize good fortune, turn the sky and the earth's axis, and rely on this to transcend the ordinary and become a saint, becoming an immortal and an ancestor. Xianxia seemed to realize something when he heard the words. Xing Dafeng smiled and said, talk a few more off-topic words? Xianxia said solemnly, I would like to hear the details and listen carefully. Xing Dafeng walked side by side with her and said with a smile, 10,000 years ago it was ancient times. In the battle of ascension to heaven, the heavenly court was broken and the divine way collapsed. With great development, those immortal talents with destiny and good luck, who have heard the Tao and passed through the Tao sword, opened up and searched for the heavens and blessed places, and are at ease, wanting to be with the heaven and the earth. Secondly, to live long, to achieve the realm of real people on land often live in the world. You can have a moment of joy again, the soul is separated after all, and the boundary between yin and yang is unclear. 7,000 years ago in ancient times, a group of ancient gods survived, occupying part of the old gods, and each performed their duties. It's just a reduction. Jiaolong is still responsible for the cloud and rain. The city god's temple began to appear in the world, and the brand new gods sealed by the court belong to the orthodox. And there are so many obscene temples in various places, sharing the incense in the world, lest the old gods hide in them and take the opportunity to revive. To put it simply, Fengshen is to distract the gods. Year after year, saying goodbye to the old and ushering in the new, the Chinese Confucian temple has established the tradition of ringing the spring drum every year. A warning. 5,000 years ago was the Middle Ages, and 3,000 years was marked by the Battle of Killing the Dragon. Today it is generally regarded as modern times by the qi refiners on the mountain. Now this rain, you and I are just in time. A new turning point. As for how the future generations will decide, we have to wait another 1,000 years. In addition to the rites of making characters 10,000 years ago, the Sage of Rites is incomparable. About 8,000 years ago he also worked with experts to formulate more detailed rules. Howren followed the ancient rituals established by the Sages of Rites to build temples. Temple, enshrining the gods and masters, compiling family trees, offering incense and offering sacrifices. The 3 souls and 7 souls of a person are linked to life and death. They live in the world and live in the yang world. In the temple the body is buried and each has its own place. The soul will be worshipped forever because it belongs to the ancestral temple. It is the destiny. When the burial needs to be wailed 3 times and a coffin is said to seal the coffin, it is considered that the coffin has settled down. Therefore, apart from the number of souls, they have different destinations and there is still a distinction between primary and secondary. The soul ascends to the sky and the soul lives underground. Of course the patriarchs of the 3 religions are powerful, but I only admire Li Sheng. Qin Lingjun was startled when he heard it, and he really saw Brother Dafeng right. There is something. Even if it is nonsense and nonsense, if you can compile so much at once without taking a breath, it is quite quick-witted, right? It's just that when Qin Lingjun heard the last sentence he quickly kicked Jing Dafeng secretly. Please speak slowly, don't be so indifferent. Qing Jia stopped, turned sideways and had a chat with the man and said solemnly, "Thank you, Mr. Guo, for your teaching. It's as if you see the sun through the clouds and you're enlightened." Jing Dafeng hurriedly dodged and said with a smile, "It's just a few idle words, I can't afford the great gift of Yunhu Daoist." Qing Jia was in high spirits, adding more color and becoming more and more beautiful. It was really shocking. "Can you go to Mr. S' house to disturb me later?" Jing Dafeng shook his head, patted his stomach with a smile. "I'm not well educated, I'm already empty, and if I talk about it again I'll show my timidity." It is indisputable that Jing Dafeng has already left Yufeng. Qing Jia still wanted to persuade her to stay, so she stretched out her arms, but hesitated for a moment and gave up. Experts outside the world, nothing more than that. And the handsome and unrestrained man who traveled far away was still secretly delighted. "This one is playing hard to get, it's perfect, it's absolutely amazing." Or did he talk about that sister's heart to ask was not firm enough? Standing where she was, she just let out a long sigh and let it go. When Zheng Dafeng arrived at the gate of the mountain he didn't care about talking to Xianwei and ran to the room to tidy up the bedding, shaking the foot of the bed. It was very firm and it would definitely not creak. Xianwei was a little curious, so he went to the house. Zheng Dafeng wiped his mouth, walked like flying and shouted, "I'll help watch the door, you just need to rest." Xianwei went in without knowing it, but he was happy to sneak in, so he went to his own room. The plaque in the study room was written by Zheng Dafeng with a pen. The old cook helped to make a plaque called Zhou Xian. A golden lacquer, ancient seal characters. Style. The real gold paint. In fact, Xianwei still has several alternative titles for his study, such as reading the unseen study, or rereading the already seen study. In life, if you want to be pleasing to the eye and enjoy the happiness, it is nothing more than reading new books that you have not seen and saying goodbye to old people you know well. It's just that after thinking about it, Xianwei still feels that he can't forget his roots in life. This Taoist name has been with him for many years, and hanging there is just a reminder that he has suffered. Xianwei went into the study room and took out the 2 serious books in his sleeves. Almost all the study offerings on the table were sent by Nuanshu, and every new year and festival he added one, and the accumulation made a lot. Sitting on a chair with a 4-year-old official hat, he took out a Taoist book from a small mountain of books on the desk. The name is a bit long, and it is Yuqing Jinju Qinghua Secret Text Jinbao Nei Alchemy Formula. Xianwei has a habit of reading. He likes to read prefaces and postscripts. After entering Luopa Mountain, the secrets of Daoist scriptures that I never dared to dream of before can be obtained at my fingertips, but this habit has not changed. The reason is very simple, except for the beginning and end, the middle ones I can't understand it. The characters are naturally recognizable, and when they are connected together, Xianwei can see it like a cloud, inexplicable, and always feel that he can't understand it, which is of no benefit. Not to mention the relatively pragmatic Taoist book at hand, it is the detailed explanation process. One by one, the secrets of the Immortal family's cultivation that marked the pass and practice method. Xianwei read it but still didn't read it. Not annoyed by this, Xianwei has always known that he is not a real fairy seed, does not have the root of the Taoism, and it is a fluke to be able to cultivate spells by mistake and become a second-level Qi trainer. The job of guarding the door is actually just a matter of taking a seat. When he has free time, Xianwei will come to the study to drink by himself, drink some old wine, have 2 snacks, read books, and play chess and scores. Don't look at Daoist Xianwei, who has to watch the door every day, and he has never missed his homework day and night every day. He dare not be lazy in the slightest, worried about losing his job and wandering in the rivers and lakes again. It's just that Xianwei thinks that he is limited by his talent and his progress is slow. He was not too impatient before, but he knew that Luopa Mountain doesn't care about the level of the realm, so it's okay to muddle through. Now he has accepted an apprentice and he is still a serious disciple. In addition, Lin Feijing's realm is not low now. According to Wei Shanjun, this son has a deep foundation of Taoism, and his immortal bones are not light. The point is that the realm of the disciple is higher than that of the master. It's shameless. We Xianwei Daoist are a little embarrassed. In fact, Wei Ba's statement is a pun. It seems to be congratulating the Taoist master Xianwei, but it is actually praising Lin Feijing's profound fortune and extraordinary fortune. He was able to worship him as a teacher and became a Taoist in the name of Xianwei, the big disciple on the road. But Xianwei didn't know the twists and turns here. Because of the disheartened practice of Taoism, he finally became a little bit determined to win. The Taoist priest, who has been dreaming almost every day since he can remember, has not dreamed for 9 consecutive days. Xianwei didn't pay much attention to this. Living in seclusion in the mountains, keeping the door behind closed doors, burning incense late at night and warding off sleep demons, is already a blessing. Supplemented by reading, it is the first good way for our generation of scholars to settle their souls. After reading Taoist scriptures for a while, yawning and needing to refresh himself, Xianwei changed to a book that could be read by following the folds and jumping, and it was like a god's help, killing millions of sleepy people. It was also about reading. Wei Bo hid in Beiyu's reading room. The previous night banquet was too busy, so it was slow. In the past, I met people who were not good and wanted to hold a night banquet in a different way, but I just held one if I had some excuses. Now that I have a name, it should come to an end. At the moment, there is something that needs to be discussed with Chen Pingon. It turns out that the Dali court is about to secretly send a group of Taoist embryos with immortal roots and good talents who have practiced martial arts since childhood, a total of 16 people. Half of them belong to related households, and they are the children of Dallas' top wealthy aristocratic families, or good seedlings found and cultivated by these families. The other half are kendo geniuses and martial arts prodigies carefully selected by Dali Nianganlang from various countries in the south of Aquarius continent. And it is said that in another year or 2 the second batch will be sent, and try to strive for all of them to be sword cultivators. Disturbed by Qin Lingjun, Wei Bo put down the books at hand, walked out of the room barefoot, stood under the eaves and habitually reached out to twist the golden earring. Thinking of people in the mirror, it is even more amazing to see through the clouds. Zhongyue Jinqing has always spoken frankly, saying that Wei Ba's Piyun Mountain is very fragrant, and the reason why he can top the 5 mountains is because of his face. Wei Bo didn't bother to refute, so he just accepted it. According to the previous schedule of Fijian's letter transmission, those young girls will arrive at Nujiadu by a military ferry in 2 days. Chin Pingon is not in the mountains recently. Maybe he is busy or he may have his own plans anyway. Without an immediate reply to the Ministry of Punishment, the Dali court could not help but worry that the door would be shut down, But don't send the person, you have to go back to the house on the same day. Even His Majesty the Emperor knew about it. So he asked the Ministry of Rights after sending a secret letter to Piyun Mountain. Weibo had no choice but to go to the Ministry of Criminal Affairs in the capital himself, and asked with a smile, is there a third batch? The other party choked for a moment. One continent, another mountain. No matter if you are the Xin Gaozong or the Yunlin Jiang clan with profound heritage, you would wish for someone to help send these young talents to your home. Only Luopa Mountain really has enough confidence to say that he doesn't want this. What's more, the news that Qin Pingon is now the new national teacher is completely unknown to the outside world, and the senior management of Dali knows it all. It is true that Luopa Mountain has been closed for 20 years, and Weibo doesn't think that Qin Pingon will reject these children. A large part of the reason is more interesting. Qin Pingon, who is the husband and the suzerain of the last sect, obviously feels the pressure brought by the Qingping sword sect. Can't be a full 20 years. Watching the Xiaozong be in full swing and flourishing, the Luopa Mountain is really closed and it has been deserted. Qin Pingon even started to prepare for an important matter, arranging a detailed legal system for Luopa Mountain, and personally reviewing and compiling the books, Qi refining Dao books and martial arts secret books. Therefore, the only problem that needs to be considered is probably which mountain to place those children on. They will definitely not be placed in the Luopa Mountain like Chao Yin and Chao Yang. This is beyond doubt. Cui Dongshan and Pei Qian bought it not long ago. The nearby Tiaoyu Mountain and Fiolu Mountain are very close to Luopi Mountain, and the Huimeng Mountain belonging to Yunzi Daochang is also close to the main mountain, so it is more suitable. If you deliberately separate Qi practitioners and martial arts practitioners, it would be more appropriate to jump to Yushan Mountain and Fiolu respectively. Weibo suddenly cursed a few words. Damn it, this is a family matter in Luoba Mountain, why should I worry about it? Complaints belong to complaints, things still have to be done, such as Lu Yong from Qinghu Palace who came from afar. Since Qin Pingon is not in the mountains, he has to go to Luoba Mountain. Because Lu Yong was not an ordinary guest, Qin Pingon was very nostalgic, so Weibo put on his boots first, then stepped out, came to the door of a house and knocked on the door knocker. Lu Yong opened the door, and when he saw Wei Shenjun coming in person, he hurriedly saluted and congratulated him. Weibo already knew the purpose of Lu Yong's trip, so he didn't beat around the bush and said with a smile, "It's reasonable, Master Lu doesn't have to go through this personally at all. The relationship between the two families is not a casual acquaintance. Put it under the mountain, it is the good of the whole family. In terms of love, Master Lu has to come to Luopa Mountain. In the past he really walked too little, and it was Lord Qin who disturbed the Qinghu Palace. He must come here and let Luopa Mountain do his best as a landlord. As for Zhao Zhu's appointment as guest minister of Luoba Mountain, he has a chair in the Patriarch Hall of Jisa Peak. Daoist Lu just needs to be reassured, it's already a certainty." Lu Yong had mixed feelings when he heard this. On the one hand, Wei Shenjun, who had never thought of dealing with him before, was willing to value himself in Qinghu Palace so much. It was even more unexpected that Wei Shenjun was an outsider from Luobashan, or half an outsider, and he dared to make such a guarantee. Qin Shanju must have mentioned Qinghu Palace to Wei Shenjun from time to time. Weibo asked with a smile. Did Qin Lingjun mention that this house is specially reserved by Qin Shanju for Master Lu? Qin Lingjun didn't say anything, but the old man stroked his beard and smiled and said, Daoist Jingqing has already said it. It's really disrespectful and I'm ashamed to accept it. Weibo pointed to the couplet, smiled and said, it was written by Qin Pingon himself, the only copy. The old real man looked over there, he was taken aback for a moment, he was silent for a long time and murmured, I can't afford it and I am even more ashamed of it. Generosity and righteousness, regardless of small details, gold and silver come back again. Make friends widely, treat each other honestly, and the characters will become more and more prosperous as time goes by. Weibo smiled and said, I'm going back to Piyun Mountain first, and Master Lu is welcome to visit me at any time. Only then did Lu Yong think of something, and he was about to take out a congratulatory gift from his sleeve. It's a great gift for a real person to walk on the ground. Weibo stretched out his hand to lightly hold the old man's arm, smiled and shook his head and said, no matter how many, it's hypocritical. Why, you only regard Qin Pingon as a friend and not me. Lu Yong was speechless for a while, just clasped his fists. Qing Jia, who was about to arrive at a pavilion by the cliff beside the Patriarch Hall of Jisei Peak, who didn't need to rest at all, volunteered to settle here. The sun and the moon are twin fireflies and the universe is a magpie's nest. What a self-decorated pavilion. Xian Wei put down his book, rubbed his eyes and turned to look at the plaque in the study room. I have read the 30,000 axis of Daoist scriptures, do I know it or not? He has won fame and fame for 6,000 years, and he is content with his insufficiency. Xian Wei was worried and once asked the mountain master, the content of the couplet presented by the mountain master is so bold, and the poor realm is low, I'm afraid it can't be suppressed. Is it really suitable? At that time Qin Pingon just smiled and said nothing. Xian Wei refused to accept it, saying that it would be appropriate to put it in the study of the mountain master. Qin Ping said that it would be more appropriate to put it on your side, and then gave him a Daoist ceremony. Xian Wei was at a loss for a while. After thinking about it, he returned the salute from a scholar. After Qin Pingon left the study, he stepped out of the gate of the house and climbed the mountain with his sleeves wrapped around his hands. What way do you learn? What conduct do you practice? What teacher do you need to learn, and what art? You are the first preacher in the world. Qin Pingon is already considered a courageous person. In the Dali Jingqing Inn, he only dared to bite the bullet and be brave enough to say that he would take you back to the mountains to learn Taoism and practice together.